Welcome to the world of tomorrow. You are about to take a journey out of this world into the world of the future.
The atomic age was born.
The world of tomorrow became the world of today, bringing together all people in a new era of understanding.
Good sense requires that all of us prepare for any eventuality.
Imagine, if you can, an electronic brain operating at millionths of a second speed.
Electrical pulses transmitted with the speed of light.
Limitless power at man's command. On man's wisdom, on his firmness in the use of that power, depends now the future of his children and his children's children. But wisdom demands, too, that we take time to understand this force.
Combat Information Center is alert. Its radars probing the darkness, ready to give early warning of any unseen enemy.
But have no fear, we are monitoring the situation.
Well, hello, Herr Skojec. How are you?
Bienvenidos a the Monitoring the Situation podcast. Para su convencia, se habla español.
No.
But
no.
with a German accent.
Yeah, no hablo. No hablo. Look, a couple of things. It's been a while since we've been able to do this because I was away presenting at the Symbolic World Summit, which was really exciting.
How dare you?
I know. I kept making this joke. It's probably a bad joke, but I am, I'm functionally a hobbit, as you know. I live and work at the same place, and it's about, I don't know, maybe a square mile, in which I live and operate. So it was very
Better
strange
than being
for me.
a functional alcoholic.
Well, those two are not exclusive to one another, Mr. Skojec. But so I'm basically a hobbit. So I left the Shire for a span, and of course it was in the middle of the school year, which is really difficult to do, especially for me. I'm a boarding school teacher, and I go 6.5 days out of the week. So extraction was difficult, but extraction was managed and handled, and I got out to Cleveland for the summit, and it was a great time, man. It was awesome. So many people were asking about us, monitoring the situation.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, I got some great feedback from folks. They love our jam, or they love our mojo. And of course, you just told me seconds before we hit the record button here that we are now truly monetizing the situation. So this is exciting.
If YouTube finishes the approval process, which requires a kidney, a DNA sample,
and probably a canceled check or something crazy.
I don't know what it's going to be,
because everybody's got checks now, right? It's crazy.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was great. But look, man, so much has happened, in terms of the monitoring since our last episode. And really the two big things that I noticed, right, crimes of noticing, as you and I like to talk about, is there was an incredible testimony on Congress, a CIA agent revealing all kinds of wacky conspiracy theories that now have a name and a face, and so I really want to talk about that. But of course, I can't have you on together here and not talk about this latest what is it, the
UFO Files dump.
UFO Files.
We'll call them
dump.
UFOs for now.
Yeah, really two incredible things. But the theme that I want to sort of predict here for our purposes, maybe this might be our guiding theme, is convergences, especially convergences which are not immediately apparent. So I know I like to be cryptic, but I do think hopefully we can tease out a little bit of that, because I think that both of these stories are connected in a strange way. So,
allow me to look away from you on my screen and to you, the viewer, on the camera. I don't know what Kale's talking about either, so we're going to find out together.
Well, a lot of times, Steve, you ask me what I'm talking about, and I have to actually then figure out what I'm talking about by talking about it. How's that for meta? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know what, though? I actually have noticed that synergy, because I'll just ping you and I'll be like, somebody's chewing on a bone. He's not sure what flavor it is yet.
Yeah,
because you work your way around the edges of things, which is really interesting, because I feel like I notice a heartbeat, and I'm in the middle of it, and I'm trying to figure out how to come out. You come from the outside in. So it's perfect, because then we see things that...
Yeah, something I've been thinking about in Pascal's Pensées, he talks about there'd be sort of like two spirits of cognition, two spirits of seeing, and one is he calls the spirit of geometry, and the other he calls the spirit of finesse. And one of the things that I've noticed about us is that we kind of take turns adopting the two different spirits.
Yeah.
The sort of the analytical, the observational versus the kind of felt and lived in spirits. And so hopefully we can make a little sense out of what's
that
happening.
Personality complementarity could be such a lovely thing.
Shocking.
It's amazing how it works.
Yeah. Huh.
When it works.
Okay,
moving on. So,
does it work?
Yeah. So for those who don't know, the Pentagon, the Department of War, as we're now calling it, the Department of War, excuse me, is now releasing on a semi-regular basis additional UFO documents, photos, videos. Videos are the thing everybody wants to see, obviously.
Yeah.
And they released a new dump today. I haven't gotten to look at the whole thing. I've looked at a handful of them, and I wanted to share just a few of the ones that I like. So I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to see how this goes, because I don't really use this feature a lot. Looks like this is the correct screen, so let's give you a view. Okay, so what we're looking at here, I actually have
Nice.
Codex. Codex is the sort of live on your computer open claw version of ChatGPT.
Yep.
If you have a ChatGPT Plus subscription, you have access to it. Most people don't know that you do. It does cool things, like it organizes your files. I have 80,000 some photos for 20 years of family pictures.
Oh, jeez.
And so I'm using it to organize things on my computer. But then I had this idea, because when the first dump of documents came out last time, some of this stuff disappeared before it was even out for a couple of hours. They took some of the stuff back down.
Fishy.
And I saw people talking about that, and I said, you know what? I need a local archive of this.
Yeah,
so I talked to my little AI buddy, and I said, can you build me an index? And I want to download all the files from the UFO.gov thing, or the war.gov/UFO is the URL. And I want them on my computer so they can't just delete them later or whatever else. And so I've been kind of refining this as I go. So this is an index of everything so far. We can filter. So today we're going to go to videos and release 2, and I'm going to go with just the ones that I've already pre-selected.
Love it. Look at
And
you.
we'll just-
Look at this prep. This is pro level stuff, people. Come on, man.
This is a nerd with too much time on his hands. Okay.
Love it.
So I'm just going to go through
Oh,
a
yeah.
few of these. This one, again, I don't have much indication of the provenance. You see, I don't know if my cursor is showing up.
Yeah,
but
it
down
does.
at the bottom left corner of the screen there. These ships, this is, I believe, in the Persian Gulf. I'm not positive. I think this was near Iran, so it may not be Persian Gulf.
Yeah.
But you see these things coming in from the bottom left, coming fast. We don't know what they are. Now, what I've noticed is really
something
interesting.
faster.
Well, yeah, what I've noticed is really interesting about this actually is the whatchamacallit, there's no descriptions to go with this.
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, I noticed the same thing.
And so, you can go to the site here, that is associated. It's the Defense Visual Information Distribution Service, and they give a description, but they really don't say anything about it.
Yeah.
They just give a very technical description. 4 areas of contrast, transit the sensor field of view. They don't give any interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
There's not even location information on most of these. This one does say that this is over Iran in 2022. We don't really know. Oops, I lost my filter. Let me go and put that back on. Need to remember that when I open things here, it will do that. Favorites only. This one is really interesting. This guy is an instantaneous acceleration UFO. Now, first of all, what are we even looking at here?
I know.
We don't know what this guy is. This video is 5 minutes long, so I'm going to skip ahead to the part where it kind of exits the frame. So they're tracking it at a distance.
Mm-hmm.
You can kind of see it. It looks a little weird. And then they zoom back in on it, and they're having a hard time keeping it in frame. It's hard to say if it's because it's changing speeds.
Yeah.
Again, we could do John Madden color commentary here,
Yeah.
but I don't really know what's going on, and I don't have a Telecaster to circle things and draw out routes and So we're not going to do that. But this guy, okay, so here we get to the point where we're tracking along, and they're trying to keep it in frame. It's moving up and down like crazy.
Yeah.
Like no aircraft moves all around like this. Look at the way it's turning.
Pivot. That's
and
crazy.
it's doing it at speed. So they try to zoom in on the thing in just a second here and get a closer track. Now, it's not specified what military platform is being used to surveil this. It could be a drone. It could be a reconnaissance plane. We don't really know. But when they end up coming in closer on it, it ends up taking off out of the frame, where it just accelerates like at a crazy rate of speed. And some people are saying, oh no, this is gimbal lock, but it's very clearly an acceleration that happens before the gimbal stops trying to track it. So watch
this.
Boom, gone.
Damn.
Right. And so then they're looking for it and they zoom out and it's just gone. Like they don't know where it is. They're trying different sensor modes. They're like, okay, where did it go? It's not there anymore. So that one's fun. I like that.
Yeah.
In order to keep this in the share window, unfortunately, I have to do this the cumbersome way. I was opening them in new tabs. So this one is very weird. These are underwater, apparently.
Right. You can see the undulations from that refraction looks like it's occurring because of the waves.
Yeah. And so there's a group of these things in the ocean. We don't know what's going on.
So that's underwater, people. That is something underwater.
These ones may be flying above the water. Those first ones look like they were under. But so a term of art that is used in the community is transmedium. And that means that you can have a craft that can be flying and then it will submerge and go under the ocean. And they've tracked this a number of times. There's a famous video from the USS Omaha from like 2019 where they were tracking an orb of some kind, and somebody was taking a cell phone video in the CIC, like in the radar room. Yeah. And they're tracking, and then all of a sudden it goes under the water and they freak out and they're like, mark bearing, because it's like, how did it go into the water? We don't have stuff that does that. Certainly not at speed. So that's interesting. This is the worst thing is that it resets the view every time I go back, but that's all right. We got this. Yeah. This guy is one of the strangest that I've seen.
Is this the one that kind of looks like an upside down U at some point?
It just, look at the erratic movement. It backs up, it goes forward, and it later on in the video, we'll skip ahead because this is an 8-minute video or whatever it is. Yeah. It starts to do this.
Hey, right here. Oh, yeah.
And it almost looks like it's a rectangle, like a pane of glass or something like that, but thicker. And it's just zooming around, doing weird stuff.
No, Steve, as a novice myself, what are the big black blocks that keep showing up from time to time?
Those are likely sensor redactions. Yeah. Because one of the things that's come
out right here, look at this. Look at that.
Look at this. We don't have anything that flies that does this.
I mean, the only thing that I know that does this is when I take, back in the day I had a cat and I had a little laser pointer and I would mess around on the ground and the cat would, chase all around it. That's in essence what this thing is doing and you can see a little bit of heat signature there. That's interesting.
It's something. Yeah. I don't know what it is. And I assume this is FLIR, but I don't know what temperature settings they're using for this. So white could be hot, black could be hot. It depends on how they have it set up. But yeah, just the movements are super erratic. And that's one of the observables, the 5 observables, things like instantaneous acceleration and strange motion that doesn't conform with flight standards and things like that. So amazing. It's kind of a trip to just watch it do what it's doing, So that's another one. There was, and I don't know if that one, no, actually that's the original one over Iran. So let's go back. I have 2 more that I thought were worth taking a quick look at. We got this guy, which is, again, just the way that it moves is really interesting. I'm trying to remember what it was about this specifically that stood out to me.
The speed of this,
because you can see the water behind. Right, you can kind of see the fact that it's zooming over what looks like the surface of water, which happens a lot. There was something in this video that I liked, and I didn't mark it. I think it's just the strange motion.
Yep.
but again, it's like we're just trying to track these things. We don't know what the heck they are. They're in our airspace, and this will bring me.
Yeah. While you're doing that, what strikes me is that, obviously having the kind of air power, in use, right? You're sort of out there sort of doing this patrol thing. You're typically looking for airplanes, you're looking for helicopters, you're looking for boats, speedboats. I mean, it just seems like such a different thing that we're looking at. And I just sort of put myself in the position of the operator here. You're operating a drone. So you're monitoring the situation, as it were, right?
Yeah.
And like, like what goes through your head when you're used to seeing, normal aircraft, normal boats, and then you see this.
Yeah, and I mean, if you go back and you watch those first set of videos that were declassified in 2017, Go Fast in particular. You can hear the pilots. I mean, they're laughing. They're going, "What is that?
What is
thing?"
that? Yeah.
Like, they're like, "Look at it go!" I mean, it's just moving, and they're really kind of surprised by it. This one is, if it's the one I'm thinking of, is crazy. It's big, and it's in the clouds. There we go.
Oh yeah.
You can see it moving in and out of the cloud cover.
It's a big blob.
But it's very circular, spherical looking.
Orb, I mean, yeah.
And one assumes that this is at a pretty decent altitude considering the clouds. And you're looking down on them.
Yeah.
And I mean, what is it? And how is it moving like that?
So that's interesting. You saw that it goes outside of the cloud cover and then it becomes essentially invisible.
Yeah. And that's, hiding in the clouds is one of the things that they say these things tend to do.
Yeah.
Here's the last one that I saved. Just wanted to give people a taste. I mean, there were dozens of these things today.
Watch the little white dot on it, right? Look at it becomes all white.
It's like a reflection.
Yeah, right.
That's what it looks like.
And it's like these sort of like, look at that.
But I mean, that's acceleration. So people would say, oh, that's just a balloon floating over the, looks like the surface of the ocean again. So again, I think those black boxes are redactions. One of the reasons why they were reluctant to release many of these videos, or at least what
allegedly
this is what was claimed, is because the methodology that they are using to obtain sensor data and video is itself classified. These are classified surveillance systems. So by releasing videos that show what these systems can do, we're essentially telling our adversaries, hey, this is what our tech is capable of. So
right.
Allegedly, a lot of the stuff that stays classified is classified because of that, not because of the actual object that's being, viewed.
And it's interesting, of course, anytime you go into anytime a new theater of war opens up, you're essentially outing yourself with what you're capable of doing. Right. So it's like, it's always strikes me as this kind of a little bit of a catch-22. You obviously want to develop superior capabilities, but as soon as you deploy them in a theater of war, they become a known, even if they don't know all the details, like, oh, we know that those guys can do this thing. Like, look what they're capable of doing.
So we keep the stuff that we developed secret for so long.
Right. But, with the two latest, at least the two latest wars, or military, activities, Venezuela and now Iran, I wonder if is it easier?
Look at this thing, man. It is cooking now.
Yeah. I mean, is it easier to release these things now because, in theory, we've deployed this kind of capability in the theater of war? I don't know.
I don't know either. Yeah. I'm still assuming that we're mostly getting pretty standard FLIR videos. They're probably redacting sensitive information related to who knows what.
Yeah.
A lot of these videos look the same. FLIR, by the way, I keep using that term. It's forward-looking infrared radar. It's a standard sensor package on a military aircraft that's used for a lot of this kind of stuff. And infrared is interesting because, again, if you're looking for propulsion signatures, if you're looking for heat, if you're looking for things like that, that can be indicative. So anyway, these are just a handful of the latest drop. I think though they're interesting, they're compelling. I mean, I only got through about 10 of them, and there's more to go.
So there's plenty more to sort of sleuth and sift and categorize and all that sort of stuff. But just sort of your what is your knee-jerk reaction comparing this drop with the one that was a couple of weeks, 3 weeks ago, I think?
I mean, I think this one's better.
Yeah.
There's more detail here. I've seen people say there are a number of these videos in this drop that are clearly prosaic objects like birds or things like that, where, why is that included in the dump?
Well, you talked, I think a useful thing for the audience to remember is you dropped that idea that whenever you drop a chunk of information, you add a bunch of stuff that,
yeah,
there's a disclosure of sorts, small d disclosure of sort, but it's easily, because what's going to happen, right? What's going to happen is that the internet sleuths are going to do their thing, and they're pretty good at this, right? All due credit, and they're going to falsify a couple, 1, 2, 3, a couple of the documents or videos or radio or whatever have you, and then therefore a non insignificant amount of people will just be like, oh well, that's just a distraction, right?
Yeah.
So I would just, for the audience's sake, Steve and I are coming at this like right now. This is pretty fresh. I mean, literally dropped a couple of hours ago.
Yep.
As a recording of this video. Who knows what's going to come out as people like you and me and other people sort of sift through all this information, but it feels a little bit different this go around.
It really does.
Than the previous one.
It does. And in general, there is a sense, I've kind of seen people talking about the fact that Trump's been given more information, like since this has all started, about like what he's not being told and things like that. So it's is it a question of legacy for him? Is it a question of, he wants to make sure he's the president who's known for having done this?
Yeah.
I don't know. But I think it's interesting, the way that it's playing out. And again, we've got people in Congress. We've got Burleson, we've got Luna, we've got Burchett, we've got Moskowitz. We have a bunch of people in the House, some in the Senate, that are all pushing, get this stuff out. It is a bipartisan, subject of interest. And again,
sort of.
If nothing else, it has to do with our airspace. Now, Eric Weinstein, who you and I both are big fans of.
Yeah.
He was on Joe Rogan yesterday. And I watched that.
So you're going to have to clue me in on this, because I was running around doing school stuff, so I have not had a chance to do the deep dive. So you can use me as your foil. So
I watched that until 2 a.m. Because I wanted to kind of have it in my head. It wasn't his best appearance. It was very kind of digressive. Like a lot of tangents, a lot of analogies. Eric is more cryptic than you, which can be good sometimes.
Also, a lot more intelligent than I am. But one of the things he did mention, and this is a clip that you shared with me, is that he went on Jesse Michaels' American Alchemy.
Actually, I can show the clip right now.
Yeah, about a year ago. So yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
I have it queued up. There's a little bit more in here. I'm gonna do a couple different pieces because I think that this is important. Now, to set the stage for those of you who don't know Eric, he's got a math PhD from Harvard.
Right.
He did MIT. He had big NFS fellowship.
Yeah.
Just a bunch of different stuff. Like a very well credentialed guy, a very serious thinker and mathematician whose life work, he kept reminding Joe over the course of the show. He's like, I'm not a podcast guest.
Right.
I'm not an entertainer. I've listed myself as an entertainer so that I can get indoors. But one of the things he was talking about is he was in Austin, which is why he was on the show, giving a talk, I think at UT Austin.
Yeah.
And he wasn't allowed to advertise his talk.
Right.
He did one in Canada. They won't let him talk about it. They'll invite him to come speak, but then he's not allowed to promote it. He's not allowed to say that he was there. And they've told him, we don't want this to give you credibility.
Wow.
And he's like, what are you talking about? I already have credibility. Like I have the credentials, like
right.
My CV is basically all you could ask for to be talking about this stuff, but you're worried because I'm bucking the scientific narrative. Now, remember, Eric is tangentially been brought into the UFO thing, and it was Jesse Michaels who did it.
Right. Okay, good.
They were friends. They both worked for Peter Thiel, and they knew each other, and Jesse kind of dragged him into this. And so this clip that I'm about to show, he's talking with Joe because Joe's like, well, why did you change your views? Because you used to be a real skeptic on this. And so this is kind of what he's going with. So let me get to that clip right here. And let me hit play.
And by the way, the UFO thing that's now blowing up,
Mm-hmm.
there's going to be some crazy science collision with the UFO narrative. There's no way of stopping it.
So you've turned a corner. Let's talk about that
Right.
because I saw you on Jesse Michael's show, and you were talking about how just a few years ago you thought that the entire narrative was complete nonsense.
Probably 5-6 years ago by now.
And what changed?
Um,
Wow.
there was no way to explain. So Jesse was going on and on about it. I said, Jesse, you're a smart guy, and you know, I often would call him the back alley scholar. So he knew a lot of stuff that was sort of forbidden knowledge, and he wouldn't be quiet about it. So I said, okay, I'm going to disabuse you of the idea that you're actually into something. And I realized very quickly, at a minimum, there is a massive denied program, like usually called a special access program,
Mm-hmm.
one or more. There's no way to synchronize that number of people who've had experiences that are so similar. And there's a lot of stuff that I couldn't make sense of. And what attracted me in a certain sense was I couldn't come up with any explanation. It's so rare. I usually have exactly the opposite problem, which is I come up with too many explanations.
Yeah.
Let me know if you need me to
can't
pause
come
at
up
any
with a
point because
single
you want to say
explanation
something.
that makes
Okay.
sense of what I now know. And also the fact that the government outreach to me and to Sam Harris and to Lex Friedman. And, you know, there was this thing where these guys who checked out said there's going to be a massive disclosure and we need people to disseminate these things to the public, and you have a share of the public.
I'm going to pause it right there
Yeah.
for a sec because this is something we've
That's
been
huge.
talking about.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know how our little recording platform is going to handle the fact that this is still on screen and we're talking. Hopefully it'll switch to our views while we're talking, but if not, enjoy Eric's paused face.
That's right.
We're new at this. So, but I think this thing of the idea we discussed last time of controlled disclosure, drip feeding narratives to the public through people with audiences, through media, through entertainment, through things like that. That's something that has, come up a bunch of times. And he's saying that basically started with him, with Sam Friedman, or with Sam
Harris
and Lex Friedman, that he knows of because he's friends with both of those guys. But there's an even deeper layer to this that he talks about a little bit later, which is really interesting.
So,
sorry, go ahead.
Get you informed.
So I just want to point out a couple of things you and I have been talking about, and now we're sort of getting at least another data point. You know, that there are these, the narrative, right? You know, capital N narrative is a managed reality. And Eric has just admitted that people reached out to him, you know, with people who are part of these special access programs or what have you. And so they're actively looking for public voices, people who have some grasp, a percentage of attention in the public square, right? And so the fact that that's the structure with which this stuff is being seeded into podcast land or what have you, I think is a significant point. I just want to sort of put a pin on that, right? That here you have this very public facing person like Eric, and certainly like Sam Harris and Lex Friedman, and Jesse Michaels in his own way, you know, that it's like, okay, it's like if you're going to run, what's the best way to run an ad campaign? Well, for years and years and years, the way that we ran ad campaigns is that you pay someone who is popular in some arena, be it an athlete or a movie star or a newscaster or a public writer or something like that. Some people who command a certain amount of attention from the public, sorry, full stop. You know, you pay them to endorse products, right? And so if you kind of think of that model,
you're laundering influence.
That's exactly right. And so legitimacy is being sought out, at least again, in theory, legitimacy, or is it illegitimacy, right? It could sort of go both ways. But Eric has just admitted that what he has suspected all along is that part of the public narrative, the public facing narrative is a managed thing. And whoever those managers are, we talked about Plato's myth of the cave in prior episodes, whoever those people who are sort of controlling the hand motions in front of the light to create the images on the proverbial screen have reached out to these guys.
Yeah. And something Eric talked about for years is that they would reach out, but then they would pull back.
That's right. They would play this.
So they wouldn't give him the information. They wouldn't bring him into the world. They would tantalize him with it, and then nothing would happen. And it got really frustrating to him over time. And they kept talking to him about stovepiping and compartmentalization and all this stuff that we've discussed about the way that they segment this information into little boxes and don't let them communicate with each other, which, by the way, is an advantage we're giving to countries like China, where they just make everybody work together and say, if you say anything, we'll kill you.
We'll kill you, right?
Yeah. It's a much more effective way of getting things done. Not ideal from a human rights perspective, but yeah. All right, let's go ahead and give him a little bit more.
So that you can help mediate the disclosure.
So what prompted this change in narrative?
What's going on behind the government?
Yeah.
We don't know. We don't know. Look, we don't know what the thing or things are yet. Some of it is so low quality that it's embarrassing to be seen with it. So my colleagues who don't want to take this seriously use that like, okay, so you're now on the little green men train.
Right. This is exactly what we were talking about just a few minutes ago about the low quality stuff being mixed in.
Yeah.
Because everything that can be debunked diminishes the credibility of the total collection.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Or at least casts doubt.
Just enough. You just need just enough of a doubt that people can revert to sort of their normalcy bias.
Yeah.
And I said, no, I'm on the special access program. There's for sure special access program or programs that have UFO on the side of them that may or may not have aliens or craft or non-human intelligence in them. It may be that it's decoys. It may be, I don't know what it is. There's no way to deny that there's like a giant lump under the carpet.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it.
What prompted you to change your opinion and decide that there is some sort of a special access program?
When I started coming in contact with totally sober people from reasonable walks of life who would say the craziest things to me, and a lot of them checked and they didn't yet know each other.
Like what kind of crazy things?
Let me take somebody who's public. Brandon Fugel, for example.
If you don't know who he is, he is the owner of Skinwalker Ranch, but the guy is like an upstanding member of the Mormon community in Salt Lake City. He's a massive real estate developer. He is a businessman who has a curiosity about these things and bought the ranch thinking he was going to literally debunk whatever the stigma was around it and have like Boy Scout camps on there or something.
I mean, he's really like he is the opposite of a rent-seeking grifter.
Yeah, he doesn't need any money from it. He doesn't take any money from it. The show, which by the way just started its 7th season. I watched the first episode last night. Is a way of funding the research that is ongoing. So the money that they make from the History Channel just goes into buying more equipment to do more experiments and paying the scientists and all that kind of stuff. At Skinwalker Ranch, man, that is the nexus. That is, and it's a bummer because the show puts people off. I just talked to somebody yesterday who was like, I didn't like the way that they would, do this and that. And it's like, the editing is annoying. You feel like they're always giving you a cliffhanger. But they are making progress season to season, and it's very, very interesting the things that they find.
There's a canniness to what they're doing, I suspect. But keep going.
Yeah, I mean they're doing, the best like in the public eye version of real science that you can do. They're constantly doing experiments, measuring data, processing data, bringing in experts, asking, well, what does it mean? What does it mean when we have this?
But they're playing in a medium which allows a lot of serious people not to take it seriously.
Yes, 100%, because it looks like Ancient Aliens, or it looks like,
or like Survivor,
History Channel
like
shows.
Survivor.
Yeah, all the History Channel shows that, overly dramatize things, but there's real stuff going on there and real injuries and real anomalous weird crap that they bring in guys who are at the top of their fields, doing LiDAR and all this kind of stuff, and they're like, I've never seen anything like this before. So it's very interesting. But let's give Eric a little bit more, because he says like this is the main chunk There is another chunk that we may have to come back to where he brings Epstein back into this.
Got it. Oh, interesting.
And it's worth talking about for a couple of reasons, but let's finish this part.
Was at a dinner where he started talking about being visited by a craft a few feet over his head that came over the mesa, and his head of security was catatonic, standing in the back of a pickup truck, unable to move. And it was just way too specific. And a shared experience that multiple people had, right? And so, the joke, of course, is that the secrets of Skinwalker Ranch, or whatever this.
Right.
There's real stuff going on there, and there's nonsense BS that the History Channel has packaged to come up with a salacious series, and one is funding the other. So I don't know what that is, but some of these injuries are real, and
injuries.
Like Gary Nolan talking about people reporting.
Gary Nolan is a big name. If you don't know him, Dr. Gary Nolan, I believe he's at Stanford.
Yes, Stanford.
He's at one of the big California universities. One of the top epidemiologists in the world. He's been nominated for a Nobel Prize. The guy's got more patents than anybody. He's made himself into a multimillionaire, creating medical technologies and things like that. But he's also an experiencer, and he's interested in this stuff. He had an experience when he was a kid, and he brings people into his lab and uses proprietary equipment that doesn't exist anywhere else to study materials, to study injuries. And what Eric is about to describe is one of the injuries that he studied. It's not unique. There are a number of these cases. This is fascinating.
Gary Nolan told me the story that somebody had said that a ball of energy would come and enter the body and move around and then leave. And he said, the craziest thing is that when I inspected the tissue, there was a path of necrosis that can't be explained, like something that shows up on imaging. And Gary's a really smart, serious guy. I can check a lot of the things that he says scientifically. Why would he say something like that? I mean, I didn't see it myself, but
he's also.
That's really important. It struck me when he said it last night, but the I didn't see it myself part of this is one of the hardest things for people. It's this understanding, and we discussed this last time at some length, of trusting the testimony of credible people as a form of evidence. And a lot of people, I think, under-index that.
Right. So a cop, right, we joked last episode about Australia, right?
Yeah.
That, I've never been to Australia, but I've met these people who call themselves Australians. I've seen pictures of Australia. I've seen video of Australia, but I've never been myself. So in terms of verification, I haven't verified it physically, but I'm taking it on the faith that I place in the testimony presented to me. Right. And I think, this just popped into my head. I have done a decent amount of, reading around what it was like in Europe in 1493 and 1494 and 1495, et cetera, all the way up, really for the first 50 years after Columbus steps foot in in our hemisphere. And what would that have been like? So this guy comes back and he says, so we didn't run into India. We ran into this other, let's just call it a world. And I'm going to call it the New World. And trust me, bro, it exists. Right. And look, there's this thing we call corn, and, there's gold, and there's whatever, right? Fill in the blank, and a native, and, you bring these things back, and, what would that have been like in that strange, murky period, and where I would imagine that there were some really, really, really smart bros who were like, Columbus is smoking crack. He's a grifter.
Although I would think societally, our standards of evidence would have been different because we didn't have access to the kinds of records that we do now.
So yes, but no, right? I think that, we default to what we perceive of as the given. So certainly, imagine somebody banging around, I don't know, Portugal in 1495. You know, you know who this Columbus guy is. You've talked to this Columbus guy is, but you know, it's like, it's easy, you know, but you know, obviously there is such a thing as a new world. You and I live in the new world.
Right.
We're beaming up from the new world right now. Right. So, but as those things settle into normal, then you're always maintaining this sort of this strange, estuary zone, you know, this sort of where the salt water and the fresh water commingle and collide. And it's kind of unclear as to, well, is it salt water or is it fresh water? Well, it's kind of both. And I feel like epistemologically, we're in that kind of, we've just moved the murkiness to a different level.
But don't you feel like, you know, I mean, we've talked about the phenomenon of Pics, or it didn't happen.
Didn't happen.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, but that was downstream of a technological innovation called photography.
Yep.
Which has only been around for a couple hundred years. Before that, like, if you wanted to know what happened somewhere else, somebody had to draw a picture of it for you.
Yeah.
You know,
draw a picture,
and you had to trust that they drew it accurately,
and write a narrative, right? I mean, but it hasn't changed fundamentally, right? We have quote unquote conquered time and space insofar as, like, right now, in a pinch, I can pop on over to Providence Airport and I can fly down in a matter of a couple of hours and be in the same room with you, right? So we've sped up those barriers of verification, I guess, you know, we might say, but there's still a kind of level of that too can be gamed.
Well, I mean, you talk a lot about things like the buffered self and the porous self and these things, you know, out of, I forget, is it Taylor?
Charles Taylor, yeah.
You know, and I have to push back a little on the feeling of when we lived in a more mystical world, or to use the kind of language that was probably used at, you know, the summit you just came back from, an enchanted world, you know, we were more willing to accept outrageous claims because everybody believed in outrageous things. I mean,
sure,
like it or not, the tenets of the religions that have formed the West they're not falsifiable. They involve miracles. They involve supernatural events. We can't prove them. We can't always see them with our eyes, and yet we've believed them for so long. I think that the kind of skepticism we have now is in part a function of the advancement of technologies that can document evidence, right? And so the more, you know, every time there's photo, now there's video, now there's spectroscopy, now there's this, now there's that, right? Like, every time you add a layer of, we can measure this, now all of that has to be part of everything, or we don't believe it. And I do feel like it escalates things.
Right. But you and I are both, you probably even more so than me, you know, we're immersed in the digitally augmented social imaginary, right? So that, you know, we have joked about the Will Smith eating spaghetti video, you know, and you can chart sort of the way in which the image renderings started, you know, and it was a hot mess. And now, man, they're getting, you know, well, the uncanny valley thing, right? They're getting better and better and better and better, right? So, you know, we used to be able to very confidently say Pixar didn't happen. But interestingly enough, we are now at the point where it's almost, if you have video, the suspicion is, how is it augmented? How is it changed? Right? So it is tricking. So the powers that we have used to verify truth or falsehood are now becoming easily gameable and manipulable, so that you can even use those, what we would consider sort of the gold standard, right? What is the gold standard? Well, people always say, well, when the UFO lands on the White House lawn.
So
right? But you and I both know that if that were to happen, I don't know if that would be the gold standard we would hope it would be.
By the way, to illustrate what you were saying, the original Will Smith spaghetti video.
Oh, that's hot. That's hot.
Keep redoing it as the models get better.
Look, 25 is so good.
But 26?
Right. Watch this. I mean.
So have you heard of Kling 3.0?
I heard it can create multiple scene cuts like this with a single prompt. and it knows when to cut to whoever is talking.
But did you know that all this audio was also generated with the same prompt?
I guess I didn't, sir.
Study harder, kid. Eat your spaghetti.
So let's take it back to Rogan here for a minute, and let's finish up. There's a part here coming up where Eric talks about getting pulled in deeper to this mystery. Yep. And that caught my attention because for years he's been complaining that he's been kind of, again, teased but kept out of the loop.
Yeah.
Done some very strange work on material science.
Right.
Where he's analyzed particles or little.
They're still talking about Gary Nolan, about the
and
things that he's studied in his lab.
From wreckages from the 1970s and 60s.
Yeah, that I don't know the provenance. Like he'll carry around a little thing and he'll show it to me. He'll say, there's no combination of materials and alloys that this match had produced. And I say, okay, it doesn't mean anything to me. Again, it's all. I have no. At this point, I have no primary contact with anything anomalous. I just have all sorts of secondary stuff. And by the way, the thing that you saw with the Jesse Michels and American Alchemy,
here it is.
Boy, did that get a response inside the government, that particular episode.
How so?
I had a lot of people who had stopped talking to me about UFOs who suddenly, I had like 8 calls immediately after it aired. Hey, Eric, just thought I'd catch up with you. There was a huge discussion inside. And the first, without getting into particulars, the first official outreach, like really official outreach, the checks in the wake of that episode. And I'm not under any NDAs. Nobody's told.
To be clear, for those who have not watched that episode, I don't remember if we talked about it on any of the shows. So the setup was Jesse Michels, who is, again, a friend of Eric's. He runs the podcast American Alchemy, which is great. If you're into this topic at all, it's one of the best out there. He does a lot of wild episodes about crazy topics, but it's what I love about him is he'll talk to anybody. Doesn't mean he believes it, but he wants to sift through all the information to get the stuff. But he did an episode with Eric Weinstein, who is, a credible mathematician and physicist and also a skeptic, and Dr. Eric Davis, who has been involved in so many of these programs. He was part of Bigelow's National Institute for Discovery Sciences, NIDS, when they were doing the research on Skinwalker Ranch. He's been involved on just so much of this crash retrieval related stuff. So they had it out and they had this conversation about, Eric Weinstein's thing is why, if you're saying to us that these craft are being observed breaking the laws of physics,
right?
Are there no physicists working on this project? Because the one group of people who could potentially give you an answer about is this or is it not breaking the laws of physics are the physicists. And yet he's like, I know the top physicists in the field. It's a small community. Nobody's working on this that I'm aware of. And Eric Davis who is a physicist,
right?
But he was like, yeah, that's because, they're all engineers. Like for whatever reason, they're just not working on the program and everything is kept under this classified, umbrella. So the fact that they had this big discussion and Eric talked about how preposterous it was that the top minds in the field aren't working on this and that it could be remedied, and that immediately after the show airs, he gets a call from 8 different people inside the government bringing him in some official capacity is an important data point.
Yeah.
Told me anything that I can't discuss, but that may change. One thing that's very clear to me is that when I hear something from many sources, I don't need to protect it anymore. It's already out. Okay. I have now heard the White Sands story from many sources.
This is the one where the crafts hovered over the base, shut down the nuclear program. Is that it?
I'm just going to say what I can say that's fuzzed out that can't be traced to anybody.
Okay.
Before he says that, just to be clear, the base ones are not White Sands. They happened up in Montana. But Joe's conflating different events, and Eric, I don't think, has enough lore in his head to correct it. So he's just going to pivot to what he knows about White Sands, and actually White Sands and Sandia show up in this latest dump of documents, which is interesting too.
I was very upset with this shutdown of the El Paso airspace.
That was.
Do you remember that, Kale?
I do. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So what was it, like a month, 2 months ago?
It's 2 months ago.
And the entire El Paso, like the commercial air traffic, everything was shut down because
they offered some explanation like it was cartel drones,
and they were supposedly deploying some kind of anti-drone laser system or something, and it was dangerous to commercial air traffic, but they shut down all the traffic. So Eric's specifically, this is what he's talking about.
Recently.
Yeah, it was supposed to be we had a problem with cartel drones.
There you go.
I don't believe that. I think Texas is another name for New Mexico. I think El Paso is a name for White Sands. Can we get a map of the United States that can focus on White Sands and El Paso? I think we have a problem that we've lost control of our airspace.
Gah. You think this was part of what happened in New Jersey as well?
Watch this.
I can't say as much because what I know, what happened around New Jersey, I don't have from as many sources that I feel comfortable saying that this is fuzzed out. I can fuzz out the El Paso story. Nobody has told me that El Paso was shut down because of the problem at White Sands.
Okay.
People have said things about New Jersey that is...
All right.
So that's significant there.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, obviously the New Jersey drones things happened 2 years before we started this show.
Yeah.
But I mean, I covered that personally. It is the most traffic that I have ever gotten on anything I've ever put up. I had just a tweet thread.
Yeah.
Where I was like, hey, you've been hearing about these weird drones in New Jersey. Here's what we know. And I just did, photo story for 23 million views on the first tweet in that thread and millions of views on the next half dozen after that. I've never gotten pickup like that on anything. People are absolutely riveted by this, not only because it's fascinating, but because so many people saw it.
Yeah.
Like there was a whole Facebook group that got started by people who lived in New Jersey, and I managed to get into it, and they just kept reporting the stuff that they were seeing and taking videos if they could, but phone videos of anything in the sky are terrible.
Terrible, yeah.
But I mean, that was such a big deal for so long, and it shut down multiple military bases, shut down the airspace over Picatinny Arsenal, shut down the airspace over Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. There were a handful. A naval weapons station, Earl, deployed de-droning technology, and it didn't work. Like story after story, beyond just people walking, home from work and seeing stuff in the sky. And then they just disappeared. And so the fact that he won't talk about it because he doesn't feel like it has been made generic enough that it's safe to talk about.
Yeah.
Is very interesting, particularly because you notice the skeptical air is gone.
Yeah. Right.
Something
weird.
has really changed in his information calculus just in the last couple months.
Yeah.
So
there's El Paso.
Paso here, White Sands, up right above it.
How far away is that?
My guess is about an hour.
By driving?
Yeah, let's see. It's probably 60, 70, 80 miles most.
Okay.
So I don't know what's going on, but my guess is. So on Pierce Morgan, I said this thing, which is that New Mexico is the connector of the nuclear story, the Epstein story, and the UFO story.
Right.
They're all going to come together.
They're all going to come together.
That's wild because I had not seen this until you're showing. I'm watching this live with you.
You're doing the Trump thing. Oh, you're just telling me that for the first time. Oh,
yeah, that's right. That's right. I did not know that. But that was the word, all morning long as I'm walking between my classes and sort of mentally preparing to pop on here with you, I keep thinking of convergences. And so it's fascinating to me that the dump of information and video today, is going to connect with what we're going to talk about later on with the CIA whistleblower.
Yeah. And a reminder, White Sands, which, by the way, if you've never been to White Sands National Park,
never been.
Go.
Okay.
It's an amazing place.
Yeah.
One of the most surreal places on earth I've ever been. Just, you feel like you're on another planet. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
But White Sands is where we did the Trinity test. So
Exactly.
again, everything keeps coming back
man, I
to
know.
the Manhattan Project as well, and the connection between UFOs and nukes. For whatever reason, there's always a tie-in.
The Department of Energy.
Yeah.
Right? That's, yeah.
Yeah, which Eric at some point in this episode says should actually be called the Department of Nuclear Weapons.
Right.
Remember when we were only talking about the island?
Mm-hmm.
Man.
Somehow, I think I was the first person to seize on this. There's this thing that isn't an interview, which is Steve Bannon trying to train Jeffrey Epstein how to respond, to rehabilitate it.
Which is also wild, by the way.
And if you can find this is...
I've seen it.
Okay.
So they end up playing the clip and everything. It kind of goes on for too long for our purposes.
Yep.
But he begins trying to kind of construct the convergence between Epstein, the Zorro Ranch, the fact that Epstein doesn't know what he's talking about when it comes to science. He's just repeating what other people have said.
Right.
And he keeps, unfortunately, though, like whenever he gets near this Epstein issue, he gets super cagey.
Yeah.
Like cagey in a way that indicates to me he's actually scared of something.
Eric.
Yeah. And he makes, he kind of, again, this is a 2-3 hour episode, whatever it is. And I don't know exactly where it is. I could look for it if we want to come back to it.
Yeah.
I'm going to actually stop sharing right here. But he kind of makes the case at one point that wherever in his life he was, Epstein was there.
Yeah.
Was tracking him. Like at multiple points throughout his career, Epstein was like one step away from where Eric was, and he didn't know this until after the fact. And then when they finally meet, and Epstein knows too much about his work. I mean, he mentions in this episode of Joe Rogan that two things that I don't think he's ever mentioned before. One is that Epstein offered him a partnership, but that he had to basically betray everybody that he worked with, like kick them all to the curb to work with Epstein, and it would have made him a ton of money.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that he talks about is, now I'm drawing a blank on what the second thing was. Getting old is the worst.
So it's interesting. What's interesting to me about this, again, I'm just hearing it from you right now, is that, Eric is the first one to sort of to really start talking about Zorro Ranch as opposed to Lolita Island, right? All the attention was like squirrel over there, right? Talk about young underage women, talk about those sort of things, and who knows, right? But anyway, clearly that took all of the attentional magnetism over in this direction.
He said that Epstein was interested in all the same stuff he was, like unlocking the most important secrets of the universe.
But he also doesn't know what he's talking about, which is also interesting. I have this little theory.
Did say, and this is the other thing I forgot, that Epstein knew the real focus of Weinstein's thesis.
Right.
And he said, my thesis was actually tricky because it was actually about gravity, but I posed it in a way that it didn't look like that it was some like all forces that aren't gravity are this, and he did this kind of exclusionary thing where the conclusion was that gravity was unique in some way or whatever, but he did it in a cryptic way, right?
And kind of doing like he's doing a via negativa of sorts.
And so Epstein knew, and he said only 5 people in my life knew that that's what the thesis was really about, but he knew, and he talked to me about it. And he said he was clearly using terms that he didn't know, like he was repeating something, but he knew. And then he, does this ranch, and it's near, where all the nuclear laboratories are and all this stuff. And he ties it in eventually to the fact that America stopped paying its scientists, which makes them subject to getting picked off. It makes them subject to being picked up by other countries. He is very concerned about the missing scientists, and he brings this up at some point. He's like, I don't think the list is as long as people are trying to make it look like. They've got 15, 20 people. He's like, I think 5 or 6 of these people are really real. And he's like, the guy who was working on fusion at MIT, absolutely.
So I want to cart a theory out to you, or propose a theory to you. If you've ever sort of poked around Eric's biography, he was a real problem student. He was he was a mess in graduate school. He almost got thrown out of Harvard, and they almost sort of, I don't remember the details, but they give him his PhD without having an official sponsor of his PhD. So like he's always been this kind of weird fringe character. And in part, almost actively excluded. And for whatever reason, Eric has some sort of, I don't know, rebellious spirit, or like he's not going to go along to get along. And I wonder if Eric is, I wonder if the blob, they are going to regret not having kept Eric on the reservation.
Probably, unless that's what they're trying to do now.
Right. You know,
because I mean, he says at some point during this wide-ranging conversation, and it's really wide-ranging, which is why I tried to focus just on a specific area, that he has been the primary competitor to string theory for 42 years.
Yeah, right.
Because string theory became the only game in town when Ed Witten declared it as such, and he was so much smarter than every other physicist alive that everybody deferred to him. And he even floats the theory that we ran physics aground on string theory because we were trying to send all the other countries that follow us. He's like, because we're the best at physics, 100%.
Yeah.
America is.
Yeah.
He's like, I wonder if we did that to send all the other countries that follow us and steal our stuff in the wrong direction, away from what's really going on.
Well, so God, that's so interesting to me,
And
because
he said India in particular has gone all in on string theory, but string theory goes nowhere.
Nowhere, right? It's so interesting if having spent time in academia as a graduate student, and I know I did English and not physics, but I think the fundamental structures are basically the same. But like, there's a tremendous amount of pressure. I mean, one of the reasons why I tapped out of my PhD program, which I had funding for, and just I took a terminal MA rather than do it. When you get a PhD, it's a club, right? And so in part, it's a guild. Like, think of it like a guild, Steve, right? So in part, you're kind of learning certain methodologies, certain sort of schools of thought. And so the game in graduate school is to lash yourself to the biggest, baddest horse in the stable, right? So that you can kind of ride that into some sort of position within the larger, ecosphere of your particular discipline, right? And again, it didn't matter. We can talk about deconstruction and Marxist feminist theory and postmodernist theory. That's not the point of this, right? But there's a tremendous amount of pressure that's rarely like, Kale, if you don't study X, Y, and Z, you're not going to get a job. But like, you're smart enough to know, right, that if you don't get behind X, Y, and Z, and if you don't write your dissertation on these three things, and in this particular school, you're basically not going to have a job. Right. And so that's really, truly why I didn't continue with my PhD, because the PhD is a professional degree, right? You are submitting yourself to be credentialed within the larger guild, in my case, of the studies of English. Okay. I can see from a physics, the difference between English and physics, of course, is that physics has much more practical applicability for industry. So to, biology or chemistry or what have you, right? At the end of the day, nobody really cares what I, as a PhD student in English, cares, right? It's such an in-house clubby sort of thing. So, the fact that, India has gone all in on string theory, as you just invoked, that's a strategy that somebody's playing to send people down false rabbit holes, right? So while you're spending all your time studying X and Y and Z, you're not looking at A, B, and C. Right. And I think that's the through line with what Eric has been trying to lay out.
Yeah, and he even says at one point that he says string theory in and of itself isn't necessarily bad. He's like, there's some beautiful math in it, you know, and things like that. But he's like, the problem is that it, you know, first of all, I don't know if he mentions it in this episode, but it's not producing experimental results.
Right.
That's number one. Number two is, he said, the problem is Toget, the only game in town.
Right.
The fact that
That's
you
right.
can't be taken seriously as a physicist if you are not a string theorist is a huge problem. He's because we're not studying the things that we need to be. Right. And in his mind, and he states it very clearly to Joe, he's like, again, he's like, I had to present myself as an entertainer so that I could get my theories heard. I'm not an entertainer. I'm a physicist. I had to become a physicist through the path of becoming a math PhD because the physics departments are all compromised. Right. And my only goal is to get human beings out of the solar system. That is literally my life's work.
Right.
And he says, even Elon with the chemical rockets, he's like, that may be a cover for something else.
Yeah.
Because we can't, you know, we can't accomplish meaningful space travel based on chemical rockets. It can't happen. He's like, we have to defeat Einstein. He is holding us hostage.
Right. So another comp is, think about somebody like Jordan Peterson and the career that Jordan Peterson had, right? He was a professor at Harvard, and then moves over to Toronto. And for whatever reason, right, that doesn't really matter, you know, that what he really wanted to accomplish, he could not accomplish within the halls of academia, right? And so one of the reasons why people in the guild hate Jordan Peterson is because he found a workaround. He found a hack, and you and I know it as YouTube, okay? So through YouTube, Jordan Peterson is allowed to finally talk about the things that he really wants to talk about. I think he wanted to help young men change their lives, et cetera, et cetera. Like, we can, you know, all fine and dandy, right? But for whatever reason, the guild, you know, and this is true. I mean, you know,
sure,
if you want to get a quicker laugh, I don't know what you can do more than say, "Oh, bro's a YouTuber," right? It's like,
but a quicker laugh where? Because I tell you what,
amongst the club, amongst the guild,
because everybody who's like F you to the gatekeepers,
right,
is like, no, that's where I get all my information. What are you talking about?
Right. So anyway, I'm just talking about this larger, you know, the
establishment,
the gate-kept institutions. You know, there's been a lab leak, and I would suggest to you that Eric is part of the lab leak. Jordan Peterson is part of the lab
100%.
leak.
Yeah, both of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, which is why they're both part of the IDW. I mean,
right. Originally,
people don't really talk about that anymore, but it is a thing. So, you know, so we have this guy who is very, you know, high profile, and, you know, he gets attacked a lot for saying the stuff that he says, and people don't like him because, you know,
wait, stop. Trump is a perfect example.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Trump is the lab leak of an establishment that lost control of the narrative, right? I mean, think about, I mean, in retrospect, it's so fascinating, but like Jeb Bush and Donald Trump, right? Jeb Bush, you know, Bush 3.0, 4.0, whatever, right? Please clap, right? And it's like the establishment lost its ability to properly gatekeep the entertainment, political, industrial complex, right? And so, you know, Trump comes through here and smashes things. And I mean, God, you know, do yourself a favor. I know you've done this too, Steve, but the audience, do yourself a favor and look at the way that media personalities on the left and the right talked about him after he descends the elevator that fateful day. Like, it is amazing to look back. Like, I remember there was a conversation between Bill Kristol and Rich Lowry. Rich Lowry, the editor of
National
Review. At the time, Bill Kristol was the editor of the Weekly Standard. And they are chuckling up and down and sideways about like, oh, so ridiculous. I can't wait that we can get over this silly primary and get back to the real serious business. And like, and again, this is not about being like Trump guy or MAGA guy, like whatever, right? But the fact is that it's a similar kind of thing where the gatekeepers thought that the walled garden that they had constructed was airtight and it was palpable and it was coherent to, you know, the public.
I mean, if you want to see this playing out in real time, watch Spencer Pratt's campaign for LA mayor right now.
Perfect example.
He may not win, but he is breaking down those barriers in ways that has gotten national attention. I mean, when is the last time anybody cared about a mayoral race?
I mean,
You know,
the first time I heard about Karen Bass, again, I'm not an Angelino. You're not an Angelino.
No.
The first time I heard about Karen Bass was when the Palisades are on
the
fire.
fires.
They're on fire, and she's like off at like WEF. I think she's literally at the World Economic Forum or something crazy like that. So so all of a sudden, people are paying attention to these things, but it's because these things are cracking under sort of the sclerosis of overconfidence or incoherence. It's such an interesting model.
But I also feel like this is, I mean, going back to what we were talking about earlier about standards of evidence and Pics, and it didn't happen, or it didn't happen. Like, what we are seeing now is a breakdown of the way that we obtain and process information and determine it to be true and false. It's the same thing, whether you're talking about political campaigns or academia or whatever it is. We have lost not only our trust in experts and institutions, but in conventional methods of obtaining and trusting information.
Conventional in the modernist frame, right? This is something I'm going to bang on, and we can have our disagreements about this, right? Right. But the point is that all this talk about post-liberalism and blah, 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 what we're really talking about is re-enchantment, right? What we're really talking about is this high surety of the standards of evidence and information are incapable of accounting for phenomena, right? And so we're looking at these videos on screen, we're listening to what Eric is saying right here, and what we're seeing here is the high priests of high modernity are not in the control, they're not, they do not have access to levels of control that they boasted they had, right? And this is perceptual as well as material, right? And so I think what you're seeing, I mean, honestly, what I really think post-liberalism is a breakdown of the modern project. We've talked about it in terms of the post-war consensus, but I think we can talk about the long tail, that stretches back to the Enlightenment and to, the scientific revolution, all of these things which have yielded incredible power, right? Neither of us are going to, I'm glad we've got, medicine and flying and, all those great stuff, that we have yielded because we've changed our perspective and position toward, the natural world. But that story is a story, and that story is not working, right? And so all of these things that we're talking about here are hinting at the sort of the breakdown of this ironclad, this is the way the world is, this is what evidence is, this is what truth means, this is how we know things. And man, like, it's not working. And look, you could accuse me of just motivated reasoning because I'm a Christian and, but there's more than just that. It's not just me, right? I'm not functioning as some sort of like, enchanted frame, booster, but by virtue of the world that they have constructed, it is not working.
Sure.
And so all of these figures, and again, it's not like Eric himself, I think, would probably call himself a materialist, right? So it doesn't break down in the sort of normal, this side or that side, kind of dynamic. But he's pulling you behind the curtain a little bit and saying, no, like, this is what they're saying. But if you look behind here, why are they doing that? And what's going on over there? And why are they talking to me now? Right?
Yeah.
And again, no easy answers. But I just think of this. It's like a fabric, that is sort of slowly unraveling because of the pressures being pulled in a couple of different directions. Like the tautness is no longer there. And as soon as the tautness is lost, the integrity of the structure, we're questioning the very foundations of that structure.
And I think it's inextricable from why is it now that for, 2 Fridays out of the last 3, we're getting UFO dumps from the Pentagon, and the White House is retweeting them, and the press secretary of the Pentagon is retweeting UFO videos. And like, why is that happening now? Well, it's because of exactly what you're talking about. Like, it's not working anymore to try to hold it back.
Right. So to go full circle with this, Jeb Bush would not be engaged in a project of disclosure, right?
Absolutely not.
Barack Obama would not have been part of a project of disclosure. Clinton, Bush, Like, again,
Yeah,
I'm just
Obama
using...
tried to stop this because he started it, and then he tried to walk it back, and it was too late.
So I just, again, it takes this sort of this strange bore of a man like Trump, just blowing stuff up. I mean, it's fascinating.
And potentially even doing it for his own reasons. Because
of course.
We used to say the same thing, back in the 1 Peter 5 days, we used to say the same thing about Pope Francis. Like, there was stuff that he would do. Like, we thought, maybe he's really going to reconcile the SSPX to the church. Not because he cares about them. I mean, he did have a good relationship with them in Buenos Aires because they did a lot of work for the poor there, and that was his hobby horse, and so he liked them for that. But more because he liked being known as the guy who did stuff nobody else could or would do.
Yeah, that's exactly
and there is a type of guy that needs to be that guy who's like, I did the thing. No, everybody else tried, but it was me. I did it. And this fits Trump's ego.
Totally.
And if that's what it takes, okay, fine. But, I want to come back to the guy that we've been hinting at for a while because it all kind of ties together, which was the guy that Congress managed to get to testify from the CIA.
Yeah. Let's do it.
And the CIA was pissed, by the way.
Yeah.
That they subpoenaed him and made him testify in an open hearing. They're like, he already told you all this stuff. CIA was not looking good on this one. So let's go ahead. And if I had a Jamie of my own, I would be like, cut to
I know.
clip 2, but I just have to actually find the video. Hold on.
And as you mentioned, I was on joint duty assignment at the Office of Director National Intelligence, Directors Initiatives Group, or the DIG, between March 2025 and April 2026.
Started out really fast because it autoplayed. James Erdman is the guy's name. CIA operations officer. That means he was not an intelligence analyst. He was in the field.
Right.
He was a spy, basically, is my understanding of that term.
Yep.
Could be wrong. Also, shout out to UAP James for this video. If you guys are interested at all in UAP videos, you can follow him on X. He's got a ton of good stuff, and I find so much through him. So he's watermarked, but I wanted to give him a shout out.
Yeah, good.
I was responsible for leading the DIG's investigation into COVID origins, anomalous health incidents, and unidentified anomalous phenomena.
That's an interesting set of stuff, isn't it?
I know, amazing.
Let's rewind that for a sec.
Yeah,
because
anomalous.
I was responsible for leading the DIG's investigation into COVID origins, anomalous health incidents, and unidentified anomalous phenomena.
So basically, all the weird, mysterious crap that's defined the last decade.
Yeah.
COVID origins.
Oh.
Like COVID origins and UAP are in the same bucket.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Welcome to our world, Steve. Yeah.
That's weird.
I'm here today to discuss the COVID cover-up, the national security implications associated with the DIG's investigative findings, and CIA refusal to comply with lawful oversight, as well as how we remedy these problems. The CIA illegally monitored the computer and phone usage of DIG personnel, their investigations, and contact with whistleblowers. These were Americans being spied upon illegally while executing duties directed by the president and under the authority of the Director National Intelligence. You must be willing to pull the purse strings and, if necessary, convene another church committee.
Wow.
The results of our investigation would have been impossible without whistleblowers willing to come forward. They are indispensable agents for reform.
So that's the whole clip that I've got.
Amazing. So, okay. What strikes you, brother?
I mean, so we've heard for years, the whistleblower testimonies in Congress on just the UAP issue, because that's the one that I followed the most closely.
Yeah.
I think the first congressional testimony was in 21 or 22. I can't remember which. So we're talking years now with probably 5 hearings so far, if I had to guess. And we've heard over and over that these guys have been intimidated. David Grush, Lou Elizondo, both have had threats made to their person. I mean, Grush said that he and his wife were threatened. He wouldn't go into the specifics because there was an ongoing law enforcement investigation into it, but he said that they made it very clear to him that they could get to his family at any time. You know, so these tactics, you know, and then we talked last time about Matthew Sullivan, who was a whistleblower who was about to testify. He died of an overdose, a drug overdose, like right before. There was another guy this week whose name is escaping me, 56 years old, was being prepped to do congressional testimony on the UAP issue, died in his chair in his house, and there were no indications that he was unwell. There's no cause of death released. Like just this kind of thing just keeps happening. You have two people who were being prepped to testify who are at an age where, yes, occasionally now in 2026, people die in their 40s or their 50s, but it's not very common.
No.
And these were both, you know, government guys, you know, and just gone, and they never got to testify. So what's going on? I don't know, but the CIA has been, and credit to George Knapp, by the way, who George Knapp, the journalist out of Las Vegas, was asked during his congressional testimony to name names of people who would be involved in intimidation and keeping secrets. And he named Glenn Gaffney of the CIA, who,
interesting,
like that guy has a reputation for not being a good dude. And people don't challenge him for that reason. And Knapp just named his name right in front of everybody. So, you know, he named somebody else who I think was deceased. But dead men can't threaten you, you know?
Safer.
So I don't know. I mean, you and I have done, I didn't read Chaos. I read the other book about the Manchurian Candidate. You read Chaos about the Manson murders and the possible connection there. The CIA has been doing illegal shit at home and abroad for a really long time, and they seem to have been kind of just acting with impunity. They're not supposed to operate on the homeland unless, you know, under very specific circumstances.
Yeah, there's supposed to be a dividing line, right? For folks in the audience, you know, the FBI handles domestic national security issues, and the CIA is supposed to handle things outside of the country, right? So that if a CIA operative is engaged in his job in the United States, you know, it's illegal.
And we're not supposed to be spying on American citizens, period.
Right. No, of course not. LOL. But but our entire digital world is one big surveillance state
machine.
And so look, I don't know where this goes. So I'm watching that video, and I watched it a couple of days ago when it first came out, and I'm watching a man who is petrified. I mean, that guy is petrified. Like, you kind of get the sense that was not supposed to happen. Like, in other words,
and there hasn't really been much in the media about it.
Well, okay, so I want to get into that. I want to get into that in just a minute, right? But first, you know, he's terrified, and he's catching himself. He's speaking very carefully. You know, he's sweating again and again. Who amongst us would not? But this guy's a CIA operative, right?
Right.
This is a guy who's got all kinds of training. You know, you and I would sweat like a pig and pass out, you know, within the first minute of that kind of testimony.
Yeah.
You know, he's has training and all that kind of nice stuff. Anyway, so he's petrified. So why is he petrified? You know, well, what he lays out in the longer clip is that he is saying, like, in person with his name on the little card right in front of him, that we, the CIA, did, you know, X and Y and Z. Totally illegal. And, you know, he's not talking about, you know, a free membership to, you know, the local dinner club. You know, he's not talking about covering up, you know, well, you know, my house was really worth $500,000, but I got somebody to appraise it for $750, and we split the difference. Those are illegal things. right? Fine. But I mean, what practical effect does that have upon me and you, American citizens? Like, well, not too much. It's annoying. And I believe in the law and blah, 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 all that nice stuff. What we're talking about here is the revelation that the Central Intelligence Agency is running the country. This body that is supposed to be a direct report to the Director of National Intelligence on up to the president in the executive branch of the government is de facto the ruling body of the nation.
I mean, they took documents recently from the ODNI office
exactly
that were supposed to be being declassified.
Right.
And I don't know whatever came of that. I mean, they just seem to just do whatever they want to do.
Well, they seem to do whatever they want to do. And they seem to have buy-in, Steve. They seem to have buy-in with all of the people who get paid, a decent amount of money to report the news and to investigate and to talk about the news. And there's this fascinating kind of cone of silence. So like that happened, Steve. You and I are both, again, we joke, we're heavy monitors of the situation. Have you seen anybody in mainstream media? Have you seen anybody in journalism say anything about that?
I haven't. I mean, I didn't go looking for it specifically. And, the nature of the algorithm is, I don't pay a lot of attention to the mainstream media because I don't trust them. So I don't see a lot of their reports.
Yeah.
But I mean, Walter Kern posted a thing. It was, I don't know what it came from. It was a screenshot of a news article saying reporting blackout on CIA whistleblower underlines why I don't trust legacy media and you shouldn't either.
Right.
That was by Paul Thacker.
Right. And we can make fun of the New York Times and we can make fun of the Washington Post as we do, but the power of those particular platforms to reach normie America are pretty darn powerful. And it's amazing to watch a story just get the nothing treatment. It's like, oh yeah, that happened. Yeah, that's a shame. So at any rate, the NFL draft is coming up, and like Sydney Sweeney showed her boobs again. Like, okay, like let's talk about that. Fine, but right, it's just like it's this strange way of caressing attention away, right? Slight little deflections, it's like a 3-degree shift of the camera. Like, oh, look, it's over there.
It's the starlings. Oh. It's the starlings. And remember, we talked about that, about how starlings. Yeah, they move in unison because they're following some signal that is, however the leader of the murmuration is chosen.
Right.
And they all follow in lockstep, and we do the same thing.
Right. And so, it's like untelling a story. Hold on, let me try this out. It's like untelling a story in relief, right? That you can tell a story by not telling it.
Yeah.
In fact, it's almost like, let it out there. Like, let weirdos like Kale and Steve, do a couple of angry tweets about it, because that's what they do. And I do, guilty, right? And I'm sitting there like, guys, like, why are we not talking about this thing? And like, oh, that's Kale. He's paranoid. He's a right-winger, don't you know? And I think he's a Christian. Oh, right. And it's just done. It's like, it's not even a story. And I don't understand how this isn't the most important. Like growing up, when we would watch the movies, Steve, if a whistleblower testimony like this happens in the movie, the world changes.
But don't you think that itself was a form of managed reality to make us believe
yes,
that the First Amendment offered some kind of accountability that was objective and independent?
But Steve, the great myth, of course, is Watergate.
Yeah.
Right. And like, finally, Nixon, and his dastardliness, we, the good guys, outed him finally. And of course, if you poke into that story, which even the New York Times has admitted as recently as 3 months ago, it was garbage.
Yeah.
It was garbage. Right. It was a cooked up pretense, right? That, Nixon fell out of line with apparently the real people who run not only the country, but the world, right? And that's what we have to look at. I mean, Steve, growing up, my parents are conservatives. Even in my household, like, we didn't talk about Nixon. Like, Nixon was a bad guy.
Right. I mean, that stigma has existed for my whole life.
Yeah. And again, I'm not here to litigate Watergate, as it were. But it is fascinating to me that, and of course, that's the great myth of
But I mean,
American
if it's proven
journalism.
that it was used, a sort of a fabricated managed reality scenario that was used to take out the most popular president
literally
of all time.
Yeah.
Like, people don't think of Nixon that way because of the stigma, but he was extremely popular.
Right. But the stigma is the mythology. You see what I'm saying? And the mythology, who comes out looking good? The Washington Post, right? Woodward and Bernstein, right?
And who was Woodward, who had never worked on any story before?
Who
some
worked
junior
for the
reporter.
CIA? Oh my gosh, shocking! Really? I didn't see that one coming.
Eric said something during this podcast with Rogan that was kind of a throwaway line, but it caught my ear. And he said that during the Second World War, the media was basically primed to encourage the public to support the war. Sure. And they've never left that footing ever.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Even in the anti-war years of Vietnam, like that's
he
also...
said we got a brief respite with Walter Cronkite and those guys, and you could talk about, things for a little while where maybe you didn't agree, but he's like, but then it went away again, and it's like, this is it. Like, media is just in the pocket of whoever's controlling things.
Right. So it's just such a part of the post-war consensus mythology, that the media are the sort of the dogged truth tellers. I mean, guys, look at even like this, just like, I mean, the grossness of Stephen Colbert's final episodes that are being aired right now. I have paid no
attention, but
it's like all these people are like, oh, Stephen, like, he was bold enough to tell the truth, and I was my job was to feel the news with you, and all these, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, as someone who has lived through, preacher grifters, like, good Lord, this stinks to high heaven. It's just so offensive, like, to every fiber of my being. But to get back to the point here is that, does a tree make a sound when it falls in the woods? Does the truth make a sound when it is blurted out in congressional testimony? Like,
I'm not sure that it does.
I know.
Like, it seems like it should be the most significant place. You're under oath.
Well, yeah, I mean, wouldn't you want to find out, like, okay, so, every 4 years we get to go and, vote for the national elections, and every, whatever years, the off years, et cetera, we can vote for the senator or the House of Representatives, local elections, et cetera. Like, I always thought that that's a good thing. One should vote. But if I'm not voting actually for the people who are running the government, then what is we the people? It's not the president. It's not the Senate. It's not the Congress. It's not even the Supreme Court. It's like guys who have apparently an infinite amount of black money to do whatever they want to do.
Yeah. And so even when you get a wrecking ball like Trump, which, one would assume, Trump's 2024 election in particular is an indication that the electoral system isn't completely broken.
Yeah.
Because you can put somebody in that the established gatekeepers don't want. But even then, his ability to get things done has been really hindered by a lot of things. And not all of them have been visible. I mean, there are times when he says he's going to do something and suddenly he just like stops and it's like, what briefing did you get? Like what?
Right.
I mean, even the UAP files thing, for a while it was back and forth, and journalists, reputable journalists, were reporting that Trump was worried he might be killed if he disclosed these things. And, like, there was a lot of something that went on behind the scenes that we'll probably never.
So if the president has to have those fears, right? It's one thing for you and I to have those fears. I mean, like, whatever, we're just you and I, but for the president of the United States of America to functionally not, in fact, be the president of the United States of America, help me out here, Steve. Is this just a matter that it offends people's sense of the way the world works? We've got a president, we vote for the president. We've got a Senate, we vote for the Senate. Like, is it just so crazy?
I feel like
maybe
there are nested layers, concentric circles of Plato's cave. And you get out of one and you don't realize that you're not outside, you're just in a better puppet show.
So Inception.
Kind of. Yeah, I mean, like this illusion that, you have freedom and that you're getting real information and that the people you elect are in control and all that, like there is, it's almost like this was a real country at one point.
Yeah.
And then something happened that took it over. And it's very strange. I mean, even Eric was talking about how Americans are weird culturally if you look at cultures around the world, because we're so squeaky clean, naive on one level, and on another level, we're like the baddest ass people on the planet.
Dirty. Yeah.
And he's like, and we're both at the same time. We're both.
Yeah.
And I mean, and that applies in both good ways and bad ways.
Yeah.
Like we have the greatest military on earth, but like there is a wholesomeness still to America, despite all of its many grotesqueries and flaws, that doesn't necessarily exist most other places. And and that naivete gets, I think, taken advantage of. We have lost any real semblance of transparency into government. And I don't know if it ever really existed.
Yeah.
But I mean, certainly by the time FDR was hiding polio from the public and the Manhattan Project is going on, like that's going away hardcore.
Yeah. I mean, Wilson, of course, just prior to him, he was dead for the last, months of his presidency, and his wife was running the country.
I mean, Eric said that he was told by people in the Biden administration that they'd chosen a small group of, I think, 3 or 4 people to actually run the country, and that he would be happy if he knew their names. And he was like, what? What are we even doing?
But yeah, it's funny. We've been having this conversation now for however long we've been having this conversation, and Joe Biden's name didn't even pop into my head. And for the benefit of the audience, I am not a political horse race follower. Like, that's just not my thing. I don't follow bills on Congress. I don't follow the midterms. I don't do that. That's just not my it's not my jam, man. But I had totally forgotten about the fact that we had a fake president for 4 years. Fake, de facto, however you want to, for some portion of that time, Biden was utterly dysfunctional as a credible human being, in terms of being the executive of the United States of America. And remember, unlike the House and the Senate, unlike Congress, the executive is the man himself. That's what the executive branch is. And so that everybody who works in the executive branch is ultimately operating under the authority of one person. It's not a committee. It's not a triumvirate. It's not a group of 7 or a group of 9. It's one person. And if that one person who is the executive isn't a person, I don't mean that metaphysically. He's a person. But if he's not this is what we have. What is the amendment that everybody always talks about? Is it the 25th Amendment? Where if he's non-compos mensis, you can get rid of the president. There's a reason why we have that. Well, so that's just another part of the show. A metaphor that you and I often employ when we try to discuss these matters. That it's more like watching episodes of a long-running TV series than it is about getting the facts, right? Like, facts are funny things, or, and not just stubborn things like you know, like in the John Adams miniseries, right? It's like, like, do facts even exist anymore? Because like that fact, you know, of that fact of the CIA agent making that claim is apparently not even a fact because the fact has no binding.
Right. So let's go ahead and back to this. YouTube. Come on, baby. You can do it.
November. I said that the people, representatives of the Democrat Party, reached out to me and said, stop talking about Biden's dementia. Your affirmation that you're seeing something real. We put in 3 people as a committee to replace the president. And I said, like, I'm supposed to feel good about that.
Yeah.
So
they told you
Yeah.
they put in 3 people.
They put in a committee of 3 people, and if you knew who those people were, you'd be pleased as punch. So shut up.
Wow.
Like, how crazy is that? And,
but that's what I'm talking about,
a
Steve.
reminder, Eric is a lifelong Democrat and liberal. Like, he's not
Yeah.
a conservative. He hits a lot of points that are conservative compatible because he cares about the truth. But I just
okay. So I want to try to connect it. I do, in fact, want to try to connect this to the first part of the show and the sort of the larger concerns of monitoring the situation, right? You talked about on the very first episode that one of the things it's in our intro, our amazing intro that you created, you know, looking for signal in the noise, right? And all of this stuff to me is convergent signal. But there's another way that you can keep signal, you know, you can tune it, right? We've joked about, you know, the old radio dial, and you're trying to find exactly the right analog spot on the dial to download the signal, right? But there's another way to control the signal, and you just turn the volume off.
Yeah.
Right. And I feel like, you know, that, you know, the testimony, you know, was it Glenn? What's his name? The testimony of the CIA operative, just, it's like, yeah, you know, we played it, but it's like on really low volume, you know, and you can't quite hear what he said. And besides, you know, something else, like pay attention.
You know, it's
to
also
the
not cinematic. It's not, you don't have a rousing score under it. We're not getting close-ups of some stunning narration.
Right.
Like we have been conditioned to understand that seminal moments, milestones in political history should have a certain level of gravitas and
a hero,
and like and feel like it's part of a movie and it's the denouement where like finally the truth is revealed. And instead what you have is this mild-mannered guy who gets a little choked up and he's giving boring testimony in front of Congress and
about UAPs and COVID cover-ups. Like what?
But more about whistleblowers being threatened by the CIA,
right?
Which he worked for, although I believe he's testifying as he was working for ODNI in that capacity.
Right.
But I mean, it's not, when you watch it, it does not evoke an emotional response.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It
really
evokes an intellectual, like, oh crap, really? But there's something about things that are presented in a very prosaic way that, you know, especially because we're so inundated with crazy information all the time.
Sure. Well, this is what I was getting at with your standards of evidence.
It's almost like a desensitization that we've gone through, or like alcohol tolerance, where you just have to drink more and more to feel anything. You know,
yeah. It's really good. That's really good. Keep going.
I just feel like we don't know how to process this stuff anymore. It comes at us. The part of our brain that's rational, you know, the prefrontal cortex says this is valid, important information. But I still sit there and I'm like, I've watched that clip several times and I had a holy crap right here, but I didn't feel it in here.
That's really good.
Why am I not feeling it? I know it's a big deal. Is it because I'm cynical? Is it because, you know, I've been exposed to too much? Is it because there's something wrong with me? Like, did I not have the right breakfast today? Like, what is it? But like, this translates as well to these memes that go around about people being, you know, like, you know, did you hear about, you know, there's UFOs here and aliens? And the guy's like, yeah, I got a lot going on right now.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah. You know, and it's like the stories that should be huge. People are like, okay, but did you notice that gas is still $4 at the pump? Like,
right.
And that's it. Like,
Right.
It doesn't cross the barriers, and I don't know what's going on there, but these
Me
are the
neither.
forces that are shaping our future.
Right.
And we don't have time or interest or whatever.
So in considering story, and the dictates of story and the patterns of story, there's going to be an Empire Strikes Back moment.
Okay.
And of course, if Empire Strikes Back is the second movie, if Empire Strikes Back is the third installment, that's one way of considering a trilogy. If it's the second part of the trilogy, then of course
then you set up Return of the Jedi.
Right, we get Return of the Jedi, right? And I look, these are really powerful people from what I can understand. They're threatening people. They have real manpower and technology, and they are motivated to not be exposed. So we're in this sort of weird moment. I guess I just believe that there's going to be some mechanism which they're going to shut this stuff down, and it's going to shut hard, right? You've talked about our movies preparing us for some sort of Hollywood ending, this swelling music and, the bad guy is put in cuffs and locked away forever. And I can't imagine that people are going to be like, oh, okay, well, we had a pretty nice run, the CIA. We've had those were the days. But okay, well, we'll just go back and, work at, work the local bingo and call it a day. I mean, do you know what I mean by this? Like,
well, you know what, I was thinking about something else that we haven't talked about that you sent me. I was looking for the thing that you sent me, but it was about how, like, the really serious claims being made by certain whistleblowers inside the UAP community about how, like, commercial airliners that get into the wrong airspace are being shot down and they're killing people because of what they potentially saw.
Yeah.
Do you have more on that? Did you watch that clip, or was it just part of the tweet?
Is that from the Jesse? Was that the Jesse Michaels
the Jesse
thing?
Michaels thing that you sent me? I can't find it right now.
Well,
but
it's part of a larger story, actually, and it involves Greer, and it involves his using the redaction process of national intelligence to prove, using a manuscript of a novel to get them to redact certain things as a way of proving their suspicions about the way things actually operate. So it's this larger thing, and we don't have time to do it justice. It's something we probably should revisit. But it's a lot easier to do this kind of stuff in third world countries than it is.
Okay,
to do
I found it, and
America.
I think it's worth throwing up on the screen for a sec.
Yeah.
Just because, to look at the seriousness of claims that are being made by people.
Yeah. And again, I don't know what this stuff means. I'm monitoring the situation. It certainly struck me.
Yeah, and so I'm going to scroll down. There's a lot here, but so it's about this guy Jake Barber, who came out as a whistleblower a couple years ago to talk about programs that are being used to basically lure in UFOs and capture them. Like they're summoning them either mechanically or through allegedly through psionic operators.
Psionics,
and they are able to bring the craft down using unspecified technology, EMP weapons. Who knows what they're using, so that they can grab them in reverse engineering. And they've found that there's this predictable pattern that they could do. And this was a big story. It's 2 summers ago. News Nation did a series of reports on this guy. And so Barber wound up trying to get some of the information cleared for public release by presenting it as fiction.
As a novel.
To the Department of Defense process of review. It's called DOPSR. And they basically have to clear anybody who's worked on a classified program. If they want to talk about it publicly, they have to run everything by them, like verbatim, and they say, you can say this, you can't say that.
Right.
And so a lot of these whistleblowers are using this process as a means of breaking down the barrier of secrecy, because they're probing. Because if the Department of Defense says, no, I'm not going to we're not going to clear this. Well, then that means there's
Yeah.
something there, because you don't classify something that isn't secret, right?
Right.
And so by saying no to things, again, painting with negative space, you're telling a
Right.
story even there. And so he presented this novel or this screenplay, whatever it was, the way that it was presented, and they were coming back with stuff, and it was called Cleared the Sky. So they would clear the sky, then bring the craft down. According to leaks made to Michael Herrera was a former U.S. Marine who encountered U.S. military personnel in unmarked black fatigues in the jungles of Indonesia during earthquake relief. They had some kind of a craft that was hovering. They were loading stuff into it. It was a big story when he came out with that at the time. So Michael Herrera, by an insider believed to be Barber, Jake Barber, who we mentioned, the programs used temporary flight restrictions to empty the airspace, lured craft in with a beacon, and dropped them with electromagnetic pulse weaponry. Okay, so it is EMP. EMP delivers the electromagnetic fallout of a nuclear blast without the explosion, enough to kill flight controls and electronics in an instant. The downed craft were then transported out for reverse engineering. This is the mechanical spine of the entire retrieval operation. But here's the part that really grabbed me when I saw it. Civilian planes that wandered in were downed too. That same insider, later identified as Barber, claimed these restricted airspace operations brought down civilian aircraft that entered the wrong sky with the bodies and wreckage disposed of.
Right. Now, remember, civilian aircraft, that does not necessarily mean a big 747. Right.
Yeah, it could be Cessna planes.
Well, Cessna, right, exactly. So
So if even a fraction of that sat on the missing Panasonic Tough books whose teams were sent to recover, those drives were a catastrophic liability. This is why he says the employer wanted both the evidence and him destroyed. So Barber had actually discussed this in his previous interviews with Jesse and with others. And he had said that there was an attempt to kill him and his team. And they were sent to retrieve these laptops from a mountain location, and it was really weird. And then,
wild
he didn't
stuff.
get into the whole details, but these guys were basically special forces type guys, and so they were able to protect themselves. But there was an attempt on their life. They're pretty sure.
And the speculation is that it was called, black on black as opposed to black on blue. And my appreciation of that is that a black op versus another black op operating independent of one another, and unknown, whereas a blue op is like an official one, right? The one with the the soldiers would have American insignia on it, et cetera. But a black on black operation is sort of even more mysterious. I mean, even the fact that we have such a thing as a black on black operations is just, again,
why are we having factions of our own government with our own soldiers doing stuff against each other?
Like, why aren't we talking about this, Steve?
And some of these by the way, may not be military. They could be defense contractors,
exactly. Well,
mercenaries.
That's right.
They could be.
That's right.
They could be anything. Like, we don't really know all the constituent parts here, but we're dealing with very powerful people with very deep pockets that can arrange to have stuff happen.
And a degree of lethality and operating outside the alleged bounds of constitutional protections, right? It's like there's only so many things that the official U.S. military can do, right?
Yeah. We decided a long time ago we needed a way to break the rules.
Right. And so the way that we do this is you've got, the official military, and apparently we've got any number of non-official militaries that are doing things. Like, again,
we don't know. We don't know how it works. I mean, we heard the stories about extreme rendition, right? Being outsourced to other countries. I mean, we're not allowed to torture people.
Right.
So we send people to places where that's not against the law, and we let them do it. Or, we find ways around the rules in order to get things done, because the rules get in the way of our Machiavellian process of efficiency.
Correct. Right.
And if we need to accomplish something, we're the United States of America, damn it. We're going to get it done. Like, we're going to find a way. We're not going to be hindered by those things. I mean, I've heard, I don't know if it's true, that the modern day CIA is a shadow of what it used to be, because it's been so encumbered by lawyers and liability.
Yeah, I think that's bullshit.
I don't know that that's true at all, but it's something I've heard.
You recall, right, in that piece, Erdman talked about a new church commission.
Right.
you've read into the whole MK Ultra thing. I have too. The Church Commission is this famous commission, the Senate, I think it was. Maybe it was the whole House as well. But
I shall Google it while you're talking.
Which basically exposed Project MK Ultra, Project Blue Book, right? All these nasty things that the CIA was doing in the 50s, 60s, and 70s.
Church Committee was a pivotal 1975 U.S. Senate investigation into illegal intelligence abuses. That's what it technically was. Major revelations uncovered assassination plots against foreign leaders, domestic spying on civil rights and anti-war activists, and the targeting of Martin Luther King Jr. It led to the creation of the permanent Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, FISA. You hear about FISA quotes here and there, and mandates requiring the executive branch to notify Congress of covert operations, which they still don't do.
Right. I think you have pointed out to me on several occasions, when's the last time we passed an audit?
Yeah, at least for the Defense Department. Yeah.
That's what I mean. It's been a long time. I don't know, man. This is kind of dark stuff, admittedly.
Yeah.
And I know, my ability to know what's really going on is obviously limited. I'm about to go teach my last class, on poetry. But it points. So again, thinking of the signal noise thing that we're trying to do here, it points to a much darker and a much stranger reality than the sanitized version we're allowed to think is real and true.
Why are we talking about this at all? Why does it matter? Why does it matter to us? Why does it matter to our audience? Is this something that we should address more directly? Because in the back of my mind, I wonder, is it clear why any of this stuff matters? Because this is, we're not, this is not InfoWars, right? We're not, we're not talking about literal vampire potbelly goblins.
Right.
There's a reason why this matters for even relatively normie guys like us.
Yeah. Well, I think it matters. I guess I could go in a couple of different directions here, but I think it matters because as a citizen of the United States of America, as a husband, as a father, I have some kind of, I don't just have rights. I have responsibilities. That's sort of a famous, conservative talking point, for what it's worth. And we have lived through certain periods of the recent past in which those agencies and committees and bodies and governments that have been charged with the protection of us have discharged their responsibilities in a grossly irresponsible manner. And I care about things that are done in my name. Again, as obscure as I really am, I care about those sorts of things. But I feel like you and I are devoted to, we have a responsibility to trying to understand the way that the world works. Especially when you're dealing with these super forces that are quite literally beyond our control, right? That you and I can't control this sort of stuff, but I feel like it's more than just awareness, that the kind of.
No, it's not like this. You're a grown man now. It's time to understand how the world works. It's more like it matters how reality functions. It matters how it is arranged. We are embodied conscious creatures who exist within whatever reality is, whatever it's made up of, whatever its constituent parts are, both seen and unseen. And it makes a difference to try to not, I don't like just going through life knowing that there's stuff going on, but not knowing what it is and not understand, and it feels significant. It feels existentially orienting. It's like, if you have a noise in your car,
Yeah.
You know, some noises you can ignore.
Yeah, it's a guy. Yeah.
You can turn up the radio and be like, whatever. But there's
Yeah.
other noises where you're like, I got to take this in. I mean, my car is in the shop right now because I kept getting coolant overheat warnings for the last couple of days. And I wanted to ignore it because I've already spent a couple $1,000s on getting this car fixed this year. And I brought it in, and I'm glad I did, because they found a crack in a coolant hose and stuff is leaking. But it's like, there's a cost to saying, I'm not going to ignore this. I'm going to confront it. And I think most of us are contained within a comfortable bubble of the cost isn't worth it, whether it's social stigma, whether we're just too busy with our lives and our jobs and our families, whatever it is. But the car is making a lot of noise.
Yeah. And the car is a powerful thing, you know, and we entrust ourselves to the car, again, kind of leaning into the metaphor here. You know, I'll tell you another big reason why I care about this. Both in my capacities as a teacher of young people and as a father to, you know, 3 beautiful children who are staring at a future that is decidedly stranger and more perilous than the one that you and I lived in the 90s.
Yeah.
You know, we are being hurtled into an arms race, you know, with the AI companies. You know, neither of us have crystal balls, and you know, I'm not a technophobe at the end of the day. You know, I believe that there are great use cases and potentially great things that could happen, but at the same time, I'm deeply aware, you know, that there seem, again, convergences, to sort of go back to that theme, Steve. You know, that there are these sort of convergences of these superpowers that are not who they say they are. Right. And the people that are in charge of these various superpowers are literally more powerful than 99 out of 100 countries, if not 100 out of 100 countries. And our country, you know, I don't say this as a sort of a chest thumping, you know, jingoist here, but, you know, we live in the most powerful nation in the world, allegedly. And the things that are, you know, this race that we are in, you know, with AI and AGI and maybe ASI, is going to create a world that is more dangerous than the one you and I grew up in. And you and I grew up in the Cold War. Okay. And I don't trust them, really, when it comes down to it. I've heard them talk too much. You know, I've heard Altman talk. I've heard Amadei, whatever his name is, talk. I've heard Musk talk. I mean, I've heard these guys, and they don't seem to care about the things that you and I care about just as human beings. Like they're like this weird alien race.
Yeah.
That has zero compunction of, to use your story, clearing the airspace and calling down whatever this stuff is and blasting it with an EMP pulse. And then, a Cessna flies in, crap happens, you know, dispose of the remains and sort of move on. It's one person, it's one Cessna, maybe it's 3 people in the Cessna. I don't know what they're talking about. But even that is utterly offensive to all of my sensibilities as a human being, and my sense of responsibility, you know, my sense of brotherhood and, you know, all that sort of stuff. You know, if these guys are really in control, there's no stop. They're not going to stop. Oh, that's Kale. Oh, that's Steve. We won't do it to them. Like, well, I want to know that. I want to know that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, right now, like, you and I haven't had any knocks on the door because who cares what we think, right?
Right.
But I mean, you get to a certain level and people do.
Well, look at Eric. Look, you just showed the clip of Eric. You know, Eric is talking so differently than the Eric of a month ago or 2 months ago or 4 months ago or a year ago.
Such a huge change.
Such a huge difference.
He was angry before because he was like, something's going on and nobody will tell me what's going on. Yeah. And now somebody told him at least part of what's going on. And suddenly it's like, I can't talk about it.
And look, Steve, I know this must happen to you because you follow it as you do. Like, I hate that moment. I hate that moment. They all play this thing like, well, this is what I can say. I'm like, son of a gun. Like, what are you doing here? What do you mean this is what you can say?
Because that is the cost of admission.
Yeah.
The cost of admission to the real story, or at least to the next layer of the story.
Yeah.
You know, because who knows how deep it goes, is that we'll tell you, but you can't tell anybody else. And it's like, if you've been trying to solve a mystery for a long time and it's eating at you, and you've got all these clues assembled and you've got a direction and you've got a suspect, but you're not sure, you know, who, you know, was it Professor Plum?
Yeah.
You know, with the candlestick?
Colonel
in the
Mustard.
study?
No, it's, you know.
And it's like, somebody's like, I've got the answer key.
Yeah.
But, and I'll give it to you, but you can't go on a podcast and talk about it because this is secret. And it's like, do you say no to that?
You know, Eric used to say this thing all the time. He said, you know, he used to say something to the effect of, lie to me like I'm an adult. And I always
Such a great line.
And I always kind of appreciated that, right?
Yeah.
Because look, anytime you work in an organization or an institution, you know that there are just certain things that you can't say out loud, right? And just the other day, Steve, you retweeted this, and I hit the little like button because we're buds, but it was a great post, and it was a story of somebody who's sitting in an airport and they're about to board the plane, and there's a delay, and then there's a delay, and at a certain point, you know, and everybody's losing their minds at the ticket agent. We've all been there, right?
Because there was a connecting flight, and most of them were on it,
right? And there are these delays, and you know that kind of thing. We've all been there. It sucks, right? I mean, does anything suck more? I mean, it's just the worst, right? But anyway, as the tweet goes, the pilot comes out of the plane, up the gangway, takes the little microphone and says, "Look, guys, I'm the pilot of this airplane. I know you've all got connecting flights to make. I've got connecting flights to make, but I don't feel comfortable or safe. I cannot guarantee your safety if we take that plane in its current condition to the next stop. Do not get mad at ticket agents. They're doing their best. It's my fault."
Yeah.
And as the story goes in the tweet, right? I'll just leave it at that level. Everybody applauds. It's like, thank you.
Thank you for just being straight with us.
Thank you for being an adult and treating me like an adult. And so much of our life. I mean, look, airporting is such an instruction, right? It is such an experience. And it's terrible. I mean, I just flew last weekend. It's like,
it's infantilizing.
Yeah,
in a number of ways.
Right, because you're in this completely controlled environment. You have no say. If you blink the wrong way,
like
you
a
could get in
voluntary
trouble.
Truman
Right.
show.
That's exactly right. It's exactly what I'm getting at, right? And so, you know, so to me, I don't want to live in an airport. I want to use an airport. Like, I want to be able to fly home to see my mom and dad. I want to fly out to see my mother-in-law. I want to fly out to the next Symbolic World Summit. Like, I like these things, and I will submit myself to that very circumscribed, you know, afternoon or all day, right? That's really what we're talking about. But that's voluntary. I don't want to live in the airport in my day-to-day life. I'm willing to sacrifice, you know, I will give you my freedom. I will give you my autonomy because I know I'm going to pay you $350 and you're going to take me to New Orleans. God bless you. Okay.
But what do we do in a world where there are dark secrets that probably should be kept?
Again, I am comfortable with that in theory, but you're going to have to lie to me like an adult. Right. And I think what we're seeing with the UAP disclosure stuff, whatever this is, we're seeing this with the CIA revelations with Erdman, you know, all the stories, right? I think what we're talking about is that I get it. Like, Kale Zelden does not need to know, you know, that you know, how this weapon called the discombobulator works, right? We joked about that.
Yeah.
Remember Trump was bragging about that during Venezuela. Like, I know that I don't need to know that. I mean, it's pretty cool. Like, if we have this thing, like, wow, like, didn't think that was possible, but apparently it's possible. It's not like I have to know, like, I don't need a briefing. I don't need a daily briefing from the CIA.
But don't piss on my leg and tell me it's raining.
Right.
Don't tell me there is nothing going on.
Right.
You know, and that was Eric's point, you know, in the first clip that I played is he's like, there's just no way so many people who are credible and serious and sober adults are telling the same stories without knowing each other. Like, there is a lump under the carpet.
Yeah.
And don't tell me there's no lump under the carpet. I'm sitting here, I'm looking at it, I got my feet on it.
Yeah.
You know, like, don't say it's not. And so, I mean, I think what the government is doing is clever in a couple of ways by declassifying all this stuff that's not really going to prove anything to anybody. I mean, it's interesting, but it's like they're saying there's a there. They're telling us, yep, there's a lump under the carpet, but they're not pulling it back necessarily and showing us what the lump is. But they're saying, okay, we'll admit that much, you know, and that's something. But then all it does is it raises the question of to an even higher level of, okay, there's something going on in our world that we don't understand. We have the most powerful military in the world. They don't know what to do with it or how to counteract it. You know, I don't think we finished playing the clip about Eric talking about white sands. It just dawned on me that we might have missed the end of that. But he was saying there is a cluster of some kind of aerial phenomenon going on over white sands. And he thinks the cartel drones, you know, are true. They exist. He's like, but we didn't shut down El Paso's airspace for a couple of cartel drones.
Right.
Something is going on over at White Sands. And he said to Joe, he's like, based on what I know, I believe some of it is us. Some of it is like undisclosed technology that we have. Some of it is a foreign adversary that may have leapfrogged us. Like, he's like, China has already leapfrogged us on drone technology.
Yeah.
He's like, but there is a third category of something going on. We don't know what it is.
Right. So you ask me, you know, why do I care about this? And I know you're prompting me. That's totally cool. I mean, I want to know who's in control of our airspace.
Yeah.
Like, right? It seems to me like that's a non-trivial thing to be concerned about.
Yeah. I mean, it's cool when you're a kid to be like, yeah, my dad can beat up anybody else's dad.
Right.
But as an adult, you're like, oh, actually, no, there's worse dads out there. They're bigger, badder, tougher, you know?
Right.
And so it's like, we need to know, you know, Big Daddy America, if we're not the strongest dad on the block, who is?
Right. And it would seem to me that those people who are really in charge of our country should care about that.
Yeah.
Like bigly. And yet, I don't know what to make of that. You know, so just it's just weird how all of these things seem to be kind of crushing or crashing into one another. It's
but
like
it feels like control is at the center of all of this, right? Or I should say, maintaining an illusion of control.
Right.
Like whether it comes down to narrative shaping, whether it comes down to, you know, any other kind of gatekeeping that we're dealing with.
Right.
Like the illusion of you know, nothing to see here, it's all under control, seems to be where the energy is going. I don't know that they're making any genuine progress in gaining control over any of this stuff that's going on.
And
but
maybe
they want us to think they're still in charge.
Yeah, and maybe at the end of the day, you know, and this, I'm coming at this, I guess, somewhat mythologically, you know, narratively. Maybe the ultimate myth is the myth of control. You know, that we've been allowed to believe that we've been in control for a long time, and maybe that itself is the illusion. You know, we talked in the last episode about the summoned dragon. You know, maybe this is the downstream confusion when you summon the dragon, but you don't acknowledge it as such. You know, oh no, don't worry, we put the dragon to bed. Like, well, I mean, I'm not so sure that we did. And you know, to switch the metaphor just a little bit, you know, the great cope of every conjuring magician is that I will be the one who can control the demon. Right. But that's almost always false, you know?
Yeah. And I don't know how we'll package it into a future episode But it reminds me of, I've been doing research into Jack Parsons, who's sort of, acknowledges the father of American rocketry. And it's very interesting because, he was into occult stuff and sex magic and all this kind of thing. And so the question that you and I have had in casual conversation about this is, what is the relationship between Parsons, dabbling in these weird super and preternatural forces and like being the first, pioneer, set up Jet Propulsion Laboratory for NASA, like did all this stuff.
Right, because if you look at the mythology of the post-war consensus, it is a fundamentally materialist mythology predicated on control, right? And so the way in which you sort of throw people off that set, like, okay, fine, you can talk about the Greys and the Nordics and the blah, blah, you could talk about all this sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, like, show me glass, show me steel, show me silicon, and show me jet fuel, right? Like that's king. And so, I tend to come at this from a spiritual, religious, mythological standpoint. And what I find missing in the UAP talk is that, right? I love Jesse's work. I always watch his stuff, his videos, his interviews, but the one missing component, which is really why, Diana is so interesting here. And I never quite know. Yeah, Diana Pasulka. I never quite know what to make of her. But one of the things that I think she gets that nobody else in the UAP verse talks about is this weird, I'm using religious broadly here.
Sure.
Right? This weird, like, religious fellow traveler component, right? It's like it's always kind of there in the backdrop. You talked about Gary Nolan earlier, but the guy that we haven't really talked much about is Tyler D. I forget his real name.
Tim Taylor.
Tim Taylor.
Timothy
right?
S. Taylor.
Yeah, it's like they talk about like protocols of downloading.
Yeah, I actually want to do a whole episode on
we
the
need
human
to. And I know
download.
we're teasing this.
I think we need to focus that. I mean, with Parsons in particular, I'm a little more than halfway through the book. I'm a couple chapters into him kind of discovering, the religion of Aleister Crowley and the Ordo Templaris out in Los Angeles and all this kind of stuff. What I will say is, based on the impression I have so far, Parsons' interest in rockets goes back to childhood. He was an only child. He was fatherless because his father, cheated on his mom, and she left him when he was little, and he never saw him again until he was an adult. And he grew up wealthy, and he had all these books, and he read fantasy, and he read science fiction, and he read pulp novels, and he read everything. Early 20th century, 1920s, 1930s. And so he got this idea young, of wanting to build a rocket and go to the moon. But he also tried to summon the devil when he was 12 years old.
Yeah.
Why? Because he was interested in all this stuff, in mythology and poetry and all these, and so he saw an evolution in human thought that began with magic.
Yeah.
And then it becomes religion. And then it moves to science. And so religion has this divine component, but with magic and with science, both use the intellect and the will to accomplish an end. You're enforcing your will through some kind of a technological means.
Libido
and so he was doing rocket work for decades before he kind of discovered the magical component, and it became his second obsession after rocketry, but he compartmentalized the two. So I don't know that they had anything to do with one another, but it's interesting to me because you had mentioned magic before. Magic is, again, like the tenet of Thelema, which is the religion of Aleister Crowley that he invented, was do what thou wilt is the whole of the law. It's about it's about will, libertinism.
Well, so think about that as the de facto religion of something like the CIA.
Yeah.
Do what thou wilt.
And they have done.
And they have. Right. Boy, there's a lot there, Steve. Like that's but really helpful when you've got the Soviet Union as a proper eminent foil to wage the war of goodness over badness. Much
but I also
murkier.
think that there's something to be said for, and again, we can dig into this more when we do an episode about all of this, but these guys who break boundaries and barriers and in technology or in geopolitics or in whatever, they're a different kind of human. We talked about Eric and about like, why has he bucked the establishment for 40 plus years? And he, and Eric says in this episode with Rogan, he's like, we need to go back to cowboy science. And he uses this illustration of this woman who solved a puzzle on Wheel of Fortune with one letter on the board. Her name is Caitlin Burke, and it was a famous episode. There's an apostrophe on the board. It's like seven words.
Yeah.
The guy guesses an R. There's no R on the board. She guesses L. They put an L in one L.
Wow.
And she goes, "Can I solve?"
And people like,
and Pat Sajak is like, "What?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "Yeah, I guess." And she goes, "I've got a good feeling about this." And she was right. She got it with one letter on the board. And Rogan goes, "That lady's a wizard." Eric goes, "That lady's what I want to be when I grow up."
Yeah.
Because good physics is irresponsible.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a really interesting way of looking at it. But he's like, we used to be bold. We used to be daring. We used to be able to say, you know what, with the apostrophe there, with the L there, there's no R in the word. There's only so many things that this could be in this category. He's like, you could sit down with the smartest linguistic people in the world, and they could tell you how you could actually deduce within a reasonable degree of certitude. There are a few different phrases it could be, what that was. But he's like, but she had the intuition to solve it. Part of it is guesswork. Part of it is knowledge. Part of it is pattern recognition. But like, she could break through. And he's like, we need to be applying that to physics. Well, that's what great. Jack Parsons was. When he started doing rocketry, nobody was doing rocketry. Nobody took rocketry seriously. Southern California had become the basis for the Lockheed brothers and for Martin and for Northrop and for all these guys that were doing aeronautics, Howard Hughes. Aeronautical engineering was becoming a big thing in the 1930s.
Yeah.
But nobody took rockets seriously.
Yeah, my pushback to somebody like Eric would be, careful what you wish for if you want cowboy science. And I get what he's saying.
You just don't make breakthroughs without it, is the thing.
Okay.
I think that guys like Eric, and to an even larger extent, like Parsons. I mean, Parsons ended up inhabiting Caltech. He never was a student there. He never even went to college.
Yeah.
And he and his buddy hooked up with a guy who was doing a graduate program there, and they were all interested in rocketry and managed to convince them to give them a lab, and they're blowing shit up on campus all the time. And they're doing things that like they are breaking all the rules of social convention, of scientific community, of everything, because they knew this was where the future was going. They obsessed about it. Right. And so guys who are willing to break rules and go around things, and steal resources if they have to and do what they have to do, like, those are the same guys that are going to be like, hey, let's give magic a shot. Like, let's just do whatever we have to do to get to the goal.
So, I mean, why I'm going to be like,
I want this facial expression to transform into your thesis here.
I mean, to me, this is the spirit of that hideous strength. This is the spirit of Babel.
Yeah.
This is the spirit that, what is never asked, because it's inconvenient to ask the question, is what for? Right? Now, I know the response when I think of something like AI is the one thing that shuts everybody up. Well, the Chinese are going to get there first. Do you want to live under Chinese communist rule? I get it. But that doesn't make it good. And I don't know if I have quite the non-religious vocabulary to talk about it. But look, one of the things that Eric and his brother Brett used to always talk about is like, we should never have split the atom. And I know what you're going to say is like, but we did.
And we were always going to. We were always going to.
I don't think that's true. I don't think
like
that's
he
true.
said, I forget who the guy was. He's like, but when he discovered the neutrino and announced the discovery of the neutrino in 1911 or whatever year it was, he was like, he had no idea that he had just unleashed a weapon. He had no idea. It was just, hey, we were doing science and we found this thing and it's pretty cool. Like, you don't, every one of these things builds on a previous thing.
No,
What it does is it creates, it creates a rut. It's like the old, you live right near Boston. I mean, Boston's roads started as cow paths, right? And it's like they got dug in deep enough and then eventually they filled them in with gravel and then they eventually paved them. And it's like we get to the places where we are technologically because one thing logically leads to another, which is why I'm such a fatalist about this.
But what's the telos? What's the end goal here?
I don't know what the telos is because
it sounds to me
it's like saying what's the telos of pushing a domino when there's a bunch of them stacked up.
Right. But somebody stacked them up, right? So to me, the telos always goes back to the same bloody thing, which is domination and control. You asked me earlier why I care about this stuff is because the people who are curious seem to be curious because it affords them power over everybody else. I don't know how I can reconcile that impulse. I don't think there is a reconciling of that impulse.
But see, that would be a telos of maybe of certain projects. But I don't know that unlocking a deeper understanding of how the universe works is moving towards some ontologically designed end. I don't know that there's...
But we know how the universe works, right? I mean, you're talking...
No, I don't think we do at all. I actually don't think we have very good idea at all how the universe
works. Materially, you're correct. Right? But I'm going to insist, and I recognize that our paths are going to diverge here, but I'm going to insist that the universe is not material. The purpose is not material. And the hang up of all the tech bros, the hang up of all the Faustuses, the Dr. Faustuses. Can I say that? Faustuses.
I like Faustuses.
Faustuses. The telos of all the Faustuses is to summon Lucifer so that you can, well, in that story, he wants to summon the demon so that he can get the girl.
Sure.
Right. And can think about that as the metaphor that it is, like, God, I can't believe I told myself that we would shoehorn this episode into a smaller footprint, but I can't stop talking right now. So,
this is where the good stuff lives.
I know.
If you're still with us, people, thanks for hanging out because it's
I know. Like and subscribe. Get to Mars. Get off this rock.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Right. That's always my question. Like,
I mean, the given explanation.
Yeah, it's bullshit.
Why is it bullshit?
Because, Steve, in the end, you and I are dead and buried. Right? Even if these promises that the Silicon Valley bros are exploring about the extension of life and all that, I've never heard anybody say something longer than about 150 to 175 years. You're dead. Like, you're dead.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't really solve the problem of the universe, right? And so The problem with Mars getting off this rock is that we're still bringing us there.
Sure.
And so Mars, if we ever do it, maybe we can do it. You know, I don't bet against Elon. He's a competent guy. He gets stuff done. All right, so now we're the same hot mess in Mars, if not more so, than we are here.
So, I mean, you know, to answer the more surface question here, it's just redundancy. I mean, that's.
But
remember,
what?
Elon has
what?
okay.
Steve,
hold on. Elon started out as much more of a materialist. Lately, he's been speaking in more spiritual terms. I don't know if this is an actual evolution of his thought.
Yeah.
But if you are a materialist, if you're not sure if there's a God, or if you believe there probably is one, but he doesn't seem to interfere in the affairs of men, which is a reasonable conclusion to come to, then you're like, well, it's up to us, right? And so his concern is we do a lot of stupid things. We are the only known consciousness in the universe. We should preserve our consciousness by making it harder, you know, to kill, because all the eggs are in one basket. We are something unique. We are something special. So the more redundant, yes, observably, demonstrably, we are the only species that does podcasts. You know?
Yes, the most important thing.
Right. You want to talk about teleology? We're here for podcasting.
Hey, for love of the game, brother. Love of the game, man.
But the thing is, like, so the thought is, you know, and again, this is very much an engineering mindset. You build redundancy. You don't have one server, you have two. So when the first one goes down, you've got a backup. Like, that's the way that he's looking at this problem. We are at a risk to ourselves because of our volatility, because of the fact that we have split the atom, because of the fact that we've done all this stuff. So the more places humanity exists, the better chance we have that if one of us blows ourselves up, the other one survives, one of our planets.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thought. Now, whether or not you think it's feasible, whether or not you think, you know, it's a worthwhile prioritized goal, that is what he and Eric Weinstein both believe, although they have different approaches to the problem.
Yeah, I concede the possibility. Yeah, like I
So it's not just about you, whether you live to 150 or not. It's about, is the human race something that's worth trying to save? That's the way they're looking at it.
I don't know. Do they really think that? I mean, maybe so. Maybe so.
I think they do. I think Eric makes a more adroit case for it.
Yeah, when Eric,
he's so steeped in culture and in music and in art and in all these things.
I was just going to say that
the human project is worth saving, and he makes a case for that from a very, you know.
But I don't understand that. What I don't understand about Eric, and you know, one of my favorite versions of Eric is when he's playing the blues and he's like geeking out about some musician or, you know, and culture, like you said. Like I love that Eric.
He spends a lot of time on this podcast doing that, by the way, if you get around to it.
Oh, does he? Okay.
Yeah.
You know, but again, like, so what? Like, you know, and I'm talking from the standpoint of somebody, like, I love music and I love food and I love culture and I love sports and I love all these funny human things that we do. You know, so please, I'm not a, you know, I don't like to dress in, you know, different shades of gray. But I guess at the end of the day, I don't understand a materialist, because if I were a materialist, I mean a strict materialist, why would I give a shit about 200 years from now? Like, I just don't get it. I mean, I suppose if I could like make my mark by the time I'm 50, and so that I could enjoy the last 30 years of my life as like some dude who made an impact on music, you know, that would be kind of cool, I suppose. But again, in 30 years, I'm dead.
But you're not, I think it's fair to say, not driven by the idea of legacy.
Well, I mean, I am. I mean, all of us, I think, are somewhere. To me, that's a moral intuition.
But if so, then that should make sense. Like, what? Why? Because you'll be remembered as the guy who got us off the planet. You'll be remembered as the guy that when Earth nuked itself, Mars survived. Whatever it is, like you can construct a reasonable
but the end is
theory of
inevitable.
mind about it.
Yeah, but the end is inevitable.
I don't know that I mean, from a material standpoint, it's absolutely not.
That's not true.
How is it inevitable?
I mean, even if you just take the Big Bang at face value, the universe is going to shrink back into itself.
Yeah, but in billions of years, not now.
Who cares?
Well,
who cares?
Well, that's like saying you're going to live 80 years, so who cares if you make it past 25?
Right. I'm not a materialist, Steve.
But I don't understand what you don't understand about the idea of this is something worth doing. I think I have had this theory for a long time that the more steeped people are in eschatological religions, that you've got a belief about what happens when we die, and that an end of the world is coming and judgment, all this stuff. It can make people very blasé about whether or not they live. I have met so many religious people who are like, "Hey, I'm cool with dying. I'm ready to go." Like, but if you don't think your ultimate goal is to get to heaven, then what you're going to do is try your best to create utopian outcomes within the physical universe.
And how does that turn out?
I mean, obviously not always well, but what's the alternative? You just don't do anything? I don't know. I mean, how long have we been?
Maybe so.
And I wouldn't even call this utopian. It's actually more pragmatic than that.
What do you mean?
Well, because I don't think he's planning on building a utopia on Mars. I think he's saying,
what is his plan? I mean, is he going to write a constitution?
I don't know.
Is he going to build a school on Mars? Is he going to?
I would assume so.
Is he going to set up the Hollywood Bowl, moon version? I mean,
well, why does this bother you so much? Why does it bother you so much that the idea of multiple very smart people, some of the smartest people that we're aware of on the planet today?
Because I don't trust smart people. I don't trust smart people.
Well,
because
but they're all like
people.
Hey,
I want good people, Steve. I don't give a rat's behind about IQ.
I understand that, but good people, are often they're good at the expense of wisdom and intelligence.
I don't think
famous
true.
Look, you want to go back to religious, Saint Teresa of Avila famously said she would much rather have a wise spiritual director than a holy one.
Are those her exact words? Just
I'm going to go with the fact
that okay, that's fine. I mean,
it's probably apocryphal, but it's something along those lines. Yeah. And the reason is
I don't think she used the word wise. I would be surprised if she used the word wise, but you're going to fact check me right now.
It could be some similar word, but the idea was somebody who knows what the hell they're doing over somebody who prays a lot.
Like competence?
Maybe, but I think it was more than competence.
Well, my appreciation
people rely
of wisdom
too much on the idea of this squishy concept of goodness and of virtue. I don't know. How do you measure it? How do you know that you've attained? John Paul II was a holy guy by all accounts. He was a terrible pope. He did not know how to govern the church.
No.
He did not know how to govern the church. All the crappy bishops and cardinals we have are because of him.
I don't want to go here. This is so.
But my point is that just because somebody is good does not make them good at doing the things that they are supposed to be doing.
You're turning the church into an idol.
I think the church is an idol. I think the church made itself an idol, and that's a whole different episode.
It is, and I get that, and you and I probably agree on that, actually. But if I think of somebody like John Paul II, I'm not inspired. Let's just say that he was a uber competent pope, right? And was like a governance, master and all that sort of stuff. That would be a good thing. I'm certainly wouldn't look a gift horse in the mouth, if you know what I'm saying. But even the church, there's something more important. Like I think of somebody like Elon, and you think of like great men of history, right? And I'm using the word great. It's a non-moral term, right? Greatness is just a sort of an expression of impact, maybe something like
Perhaps
that.
we should go with real men of genius.
Real men of genius. Yes, that's good. Is that Jack Handy? Is it?
No, it was the old Budweiser commercial.
Yes. That's good. Yeah, sorry. You know, I'm as impressed as I am by what he's doing with his various companies, and I think just objectively speaking, there's much to be impressed with. But in the end, I'm being very careful here, but in the end, I'm more inspired by someone who creates a local network of relationships that inspire, cultivate, secure other human beings in that fundamentally unscalable way. And I know that I'm operating under constraints, but as I said in the last episode, I don't think that we have consciousness and IQ for compute. The logic of compute is its own thing, and the logic of compute doesn't matter which, computer I use, right? Like I could just swap out this computer with another computer, and like I'm not going to feel bad about the computer that I didn't use that day, right? So the logic of compute is one that makes human beings interchangeable machines. And my frustrations with all of these expressions of material mastery is that it overlooks the thing that's most important, which is human connection and human relationships. Now, again, that doesn't mean you have to just sit on your hands and like, look, I'm glad that we learned how to, irrigate fields and grow crops and, make bread and wine and all these great things that we can enjoy as human beings. But it's not worth it. Why is pluribus popping in my head right now? Because it is.
I don't know. And I don't want to say what I was going to say because I want you to remember the connection. Because this is the episode of Convergences.
Yeah, right. I'm trying to learn to trust that when weird things pop in your head.
You absolutely should. So
go ahead. Yeah.
I mean, if I'm going to take a gander, pluribus, she loses the entire human race, but she gains total material sufficiency.
Yeah.
Is that where you were going with
that? Yeah. Go ahead. Keep going.
Well, yeah. I don't know what your thought was on it, but you're making your own analogy and you're trying to figure out why that's popping into your head.
Yeah.
So for people who don't know the premise behind the show Pluribus, there's some kind of an alien invasion that happens on Earth, but instead of them showing up as aliens, they take over the bodies of the existing humans. And there's a handful, like a dozen people around the world who, for whatever reason, are not susceptible to this alien thing. It's almost like they've got an immune resistance to it. And so the main character is this very unlikable novelist who lives in New Mexico. And
interesting, by the way. Interesting.
Yeah. Well, it's Vince Gilligan.
No, I know, but it's also New Mexico. We've been talking about New Mexico.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying in that case, Breaking Bad was there. That's Gilligan's jam. But anyway, she is confronted with this race of now former humans that look human but are inhabited by these extremely friendly, almost like the caricature of Mormons.
Yeah.
They're just the nicest people in the world.
Networked. Yeah, they're networked.
And they're all networked. It's a big hive mind.
Mm-hmm.
And because they want her to join their hive mind, and they're trying to figure out how to make that happen. In the interim, they make sure that she has everything that she could possibly need, up to and including an atomic bomb when she asks for it. Like, they just give her anything.
Yeah.
And you and I both believe that the show itself is a metaphor for AI. And the way
Among other things, yes.
AI is so friendly, and it's taking over everything, and it's subsuming the human race into itself. And there is a conceit within the show where she finds out that, they're eating liquefied humans because they're not allowed to kill anything. So they take all the bodies of every person that dies and they turn it into some kind of a nutritional substrate.
Soylent Green, right?
Soylent Green.
Yeah.
But they're not malevolent in any way. They're very benevolent. They'll give you anything they want. They want you to be happy. But it's like, but she lost the whole world and got a bunch of stuff that she doesn't really want. And so that's where I kind of feel like...
Metaphor alert.
Yeah. That's kind of where I think you were going with that.
Well, it is because, would you go to Mars for the hive mind?
I wouldn't, but
No,
I
of
also
course
wouldn't
not.
have gone on the Artemis 2 mission.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is crazy because I've always...
I
I've
know.
always wanted to go to space, but it's like there are risks that are made for some people and not for others.
Right. But let's just say, I don't mean you specifically, Steve Skojec, but would you oversee a project to go to Mars for the hive mind?
For the hive mind?
Yeah, right. You see what's going on here? Right?
No.
Right.
I don't.
I think people like Elon think of the rest of us as hive mind. Right? They don't look at you and I as we're normal. Like, we're human beings. Like, if I don't take a shower after a certain amount of hours, I stink.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't go, a certain amount of time before I eat, I'm going to get cranky. Like, I'm a human being. Like, if I don't get love, I'm going to get lonely. Like, all those kind of normal things, right? That you and I experience. Like, we're people, right? And the archons of the scientific, the Parsons, these guys, right? I mean, like, they don't care about human beings, right? So you talk about legacy. Okay, great. Like, well, what if your audience for your legacy, you actually just think of as the hive mind? No, again,
I don't get the jump,
metaphors.
But I don't get the jump to they don't care about human beings. I don't know what you're basing that on. I mean, you have to remember that a lot of the guys who are doing this kind of stuff at this level, as we know about Elon, are autistic, and they have a different way of relating to other humans. They have a different theory of mind.
That doesn't give you moral license.
I'm not saying it gives me moral license, but I don't believe he's taking moral license. You're claiming it. And so what I'm trying to do is reverse engineer your claims based on observed behavior. You're saying
what would it be like to work for Elon? What would it be like to work for Elon? Yeah, it'd be dehumanizing is the word that I don't
think it's dehumanizing. A lot of people who work for him,
dehumanizing.
The people who are able to work for him and do well love the experience. Not all the time, but overall.
And none of them can do it for longer than a decade. None of them can do it for longer than a decade.
Well, I've never had a job for more than 3 years. So,
well, you and I are weird. You and I are weird, right? But I take your point. Right? In other words, I don't think that you can use human beings to bootload your future. And I think that every one of those guys will use any and all of us to bootload their vision of the future.
But how is this fundamentally different than Columbus? You talked about Columbus.
Bootload, yeah.
I knew what you meant.
Yeah.
You talked about Columbus going to this new world, blah, blah, blah.
I mean, well, if you really want to know what I think, was it good?
Yes, I think it was.
I don't know. Not from a mechanical materialist frame. It makes no sense to me. I understand, like, in a weird sort of way. And I am, I like Columbus. Like, I'm not one of these guys who likes to sort of talk about him as some sort of evil dude. But like, I understand a Columbus. Again, I'm using Columbus as a type, right?
Mm-hmm.
I understand Columbus way more as someone who wants to, like, spread the gospel or something like that versus someone who wants to get rich.
I just don't know why getting rich is even the question.
I mean, I want to get rich,
But I don't know.
That'd be
That's not
nice.
the motivation here. Like, why is Elon working at all? He doesn't have, he will never need for anything ever again.
Yeah, no.
So
I
why
get
is
that.
he working so damn hard on this unless he believes in it?
Well, it's probably for the very same reason that Trump wants to be the president who, is the president of disclosure, right?
But remember, Musk has been doing this. This has been his goal since before he became the world's richest man.
And I really wish and again, I don't have perhaps, I don't have the insider information, so I don't know what his motivation is beyond like solving problems. And I mean, I have a certain admiration for that, just as like you and I both like to solve problems.
Right.
Right. But, but the problems that you and I are trying to solve are much more rudimentary, like money, food, shelter, love,
all of the above.
All of the above. But the cost, like, look, there's a really easy way for you and I to make money. We just become criminals, right? There's
I
a
thought
reason.
you were going to suggest an OnlyFans, but I'm
criminals.
Not quite camera ready.
I.e., criminals, right? Because I believe that OnlyFans is a criminal enterprise for both the producer and the consumer. So, but anyway, okay. But it's there, right? I know. I'm not going to solve that problem, obviously.
You're not in a jokey mood today, Kale. You're super serious.
Well, I'm noodling. You're making me noodle something
because you've got something buried deep here, and I want to unearth it because your reaction to this is visceral. On the surface, a project to colonize any planet, I don't care whether it's Mars or whatever else, and spread humanity to the stars by a guy whose stated motivation and the reason he does everything is fascination and curiosity about the universe. That is his driving motivation. And he wants humanity, because he believes it is unique and special, to be preserved.
Are you adding that last part? I feel like you're adding the last part.
What do you mean?
That human beings are so unique and special?
No, he's actually said this. He says we are the only known conscious beings in the universe. And
boy, I could drive a truck. I could drive a truck through
Understood. But take it observably. We are the only known, observed, documented conscious beings with self-awareness and sapience and all of the goodies that come with it in the universe. And that is something unique and special. And he wants to preserve it. And he wants to preserve it by making it redundant, because the more redundancy, the less chance of one failure wiping out everybody. I don't see how that's a bad goal.
But Steve, like put that in your own register.
Okay.
Right. You and I have abstractly talked about the phenomena of large families, right? And like it makes a certain amount of sense to have as many children as possible back in the day, because
a lot of them died.
Kids die, right? Yeah. And there's labor to be done, and there's all those sort of things, right? But even you and I would admit that kids are not. I mean, to understand your kids as redundancies is like such a violence to what they are as human beings, right? And
yeah, but I mean, I think you're trying to take a metaphor that works at a civilizational scale and plug it into the intimacy of a family unit.
I'm deeply suspicious of scale. Deeply suspicious of scale.
I'm deeply suspicious of your face. What are you talking about?
No, I'm serious. I look, I'm getting punchy here because this is like, 13 hours into the episode now, but
nobody's watching. It's just you and me.
It's just
there's crickets. Yeah. But it's okay, because I want to know what the hell your problem is.
Yeah.
Because you're
fair.
really agitated about this. This is not abstract or intellectual for you.
So agitated that we blew through our 2-hour constraint.
Just on this recording. We had the recording drop in the beginning, so we've got another half hour to tack on.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm deeply suspicious of scale. I think that it's Luciferian. Because when you start thinking of human beings as that which can be scaled up and down, you are no longer treating them as, again, this is me, as image bearers of God. And so therefore it's like Like you and I could fit comfortably in a spreadsheet. We could fit comfortably in a spreadsheet, men, Americans,
Yep.
males, fathers, right? White guys, whatever, podcasters, right? We would fit comfortably in that spreadsheet. But if the top line reads Steve and Kale, and I said, oh, well, we'll just swap them out. We know intuitively that's horseshit.
But
right?
why are these things mutually exclusive? Like I don't have a problem with your
because the order of
take
operations
on human beings being more than an entry in a spreadsheet.
Mhm.
But I also know that, like, in order to understand why the third global force of depopulation is coming fast, well, all we have to do is look at the fact that the total fertility rate in the world is at 2.3, but in most developed countries, it's well under 2.1, which is what's necessary in order for a population to stabilize, let alone grow. In China, it's under 1. In Russia, it's 1.4. In Europe, it's around 1.4, 1.5. In America, it's 1.7. Those are scaled human numbers that don't tell us anything about the individual or their humanity, but it does tell us about a problem for the entire civilization.
Right. So I'm totally comfortable talking about that stuff at the civilizational level. Do I want us to have more than replacement levels for population? Yes.
Yeah.
Sure. Like I think the world is potentially a good place, and I want a place for our future children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, to have a place. But I don't understand why the materialist cares about the population, the fertility rate. I just don't get it. I don't get it. I think it's there are like these weird embedded assumptions in it.
Are you not one of the people who says everyone is religious, just not all in the same way?
I am. But you could be, you could be badly religious.
I believe that as somebody who has spent time away from religion, exploring the sufficiencies or insufficiencies of materialism.
Yeah.
I don't think any reasonable person who is well grounded can feel satisfied resting on pure materialism. I think that the people who do tend to not be very good people. There's something broken in them. I don't think, like, for example, Eric Weinstein is a great example of a materialist who is also kind of a spiritualist, even though he doesn't really get it. He tells people go to church. He tells people he does Shabbat every Friday night. He says, I'm an atheist, but we pray like we believe. Like he understands the importance of religion in the human experience, of the fact, as he explained to Stephen Bartlett on Diary of CEO, he's like, if everybody stops going to church, like that fundamentally undermines a lot of the things that make us human, and then we all suffer from that. Like, and so I think that you can have a generally materialist worldview in practical terms. Like, I live in this world and nothing happens if I don't make it happen or other people don't make it happen.
Sure.
But also that altruism matters, that virtue matters, that like trying to do things that are generally considered beneficial by the race that I am a part of matters.
But why?
I don't know why we have that inclination. It's probably the same reason that we have a personal survival instinct. There are a lot of people who, I had a conversation with somebody the other day over email about, when you're going through a dark time, a lot of people think about, man, death would be a release, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And this person told me that they went through this surgery and they thought that they were going to die. Something went wrong or something. I don't remember the details. And they said they came out of that realizing, I don't want to die. I want to be alive. Like, I thought I wanted to die because my life was trash. And then this happened and I realized I actually have a will to live.
Yeah.
So I think there's something deep within us, whether it's implanted by God or it's implanted by evolution or whatever it is. I'm not here to make the case for anything. But it can extend to the franchise, the human franchise, not just the individual. I care if my neighbor, who I don't know or falls down on the steps outside and gets hurt. Like, I don't give a shit about that guy.
Yeah, but
I
human
also
intuition,
do if I see something happen to him.
Yeah, but that's such a deeply human intuition, isn't it? I mean, and again, I'm not arguing with you. I'm agreeing with you here. It is a distinctly human intuition. Like my dog doesn't care if the neighbor down the street, my dog doesn't care if the dog who lives 3 doors down from me dies tomorrow.
Right.
I love my dog, and my dog, is very affectionate with me, perhaps for motivated reasoning, but fine, it's an exchange.
Yeah.
But we human beings are odd that way, and so phenomenally speaking, that moral intuition means something to us, to both you and me, right? How we grok that, how we understand that, of course, we often have those conversations, but, if that's what Elon, say, just using him since we've been talking about him, if that's what he's going on, then there are all these other questions that we could probably get to that are more important than Mars. I get the redundancy argument. I do, but I'm not a materialist. And if you're really sort of poking at me, I would say that no, I don't know if I'd say that either. Never mind. I want to take that back.
I mean, if your general eschatological position is that there is an end of the world, it's planned and designed, it's coming at a time we don't know, and it's going to happen. So, what's the point? Okay, but that goes back to me saying, I think people with a religious worldview struggle to understand why those who are not so sure that things are going to work out the way the Bible says that it's going to work out.
But again, like that word sure is something I really balk at, because it's like, I'm a professing Christian, that. And it's not like I walk around like thumping my chest being like, ha, 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 look at those fools, they know nothing. And I'm not that guy. I've never been that guy.
I know you're not.
But
it does seem to be altering your outlook on
sure,
projects at a human civilizational scale are worth doing and what aren't.
Right. So, but this is where, that tricky word faith comes in, right? Faith is not surety or whatever. I don't know. I'm not a theologian, so please, in other words, like I know I'm holding this pencil, right? Like I'm sure that I'm holding this pencil.
Mm-hmm.
You asked me about, Yahweh and Jesus and the incarnation and grace and the sacraments and all the stuff, right? It makes a certain amount of sense to me, but it's fundamentally different than me being sure that this pencil is in my hand right now, right? And so as I would say, if somebody asked me, I said, I believe in the story. I believe in the story. It makes a certain amount of sense to me. I don't pretend to know it like I know, A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Right.
And yet,
mm-hmm.
the Catechism of the Catholic Church claims, paragraph 157, faith is certain. It is more certain than all human knowledge because it is founded on the very word of God who cannot lie.
Sure. But this is the issue with catechisms unto itself, right? A catechism is was it inductive? Is that
I can
right?
never.
Yeah, I know. Right. So in other words, it's like geometry, right? The structure of a catechism is similar to the structure of geometry, right? So geometry, parallel lines never meet. The sum of the interior angles.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you start with certain axioms, right? So if I believe, for instance, in, the special place of scripture, and I don't want to get into the different levels of, all of that stuff, but like if I believe in the Bible, if I believe that God created the world, if I believe that, Jesus entered into history and all those sort of things, there are lots of things that flow from that, right? But I remember driving around Los Angeles back in the day when I lived there, and it was one of my favorite bumper stickers of all time. And it really gets at a great point. that more Christians should probably wrestle with, which is, Zeus is God. Read Homer. No, it was Zeus is God. Read the Iliad. Right, and it was a troll of the other popular bumper sticker, especially amongst
Jesus is God. Read the Bible.
Yeah, the Latino evangelicals all had, Jesus is God. Read the Bible. Now, of course, they're both playing certain linguistic games against and for and against each other, right? So fine, but I can play the catechism game because, if that's what you're pressing me to do, because I can assent to certain axioms, which then I can build out a kind of structure. But, gosh, this is getting really deep, right? But, if you, this is my issue with Tradlandia, right? It's that it pretends there's this kind of boastfulness that you can establish if you just bury the axioms, right? Well, the axioms are obviously true. And then, of course, somebody like you is going to be like, really? What do you mean?
Yeah.
They're, what do you mean? They're just true, right? So, and look, I think there's a certain usefulness to a catechism, but nobody's converted by a catechism.
No, but it does outline the things that are believed, that are to be held, and one of those things, and it's Thomistic, and we all love the Thomists, because they're so fun. They're not
Great
like
times.
hanging. They're
Great
not
times.
like a bottle of lemon juice at a paper cut party or anything like that.
Nothing like a good hang. Yeah.
But, that's what the Catechism cites, is St. Thomas saying the certainty that divine light gives is greater than that which the light of natural reason gives. This is an axiomatic principle that faith which comes from God is more certain than reason. And so when I make a claim, like people of religious belief who are certain that a certain eschatological series of events is going to happen, and there is a concrete end of the world and a defined date and all that kind of stuff, that's going to change the way you look at whether there's any point establishing a colony on another planet, whatever planet it is. Which I think is an interesting and worthwhile endeavor to do, regardless of whether your motivation is altruistic or not. It's just cool. Let's learn some things. Let's go far away. Let's do that stuff, because I love exploring. I love the idea of that.
Yeah. So I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that, but I don't want to destroy the world in order for us to grant the Vanity Project.
But why would it destroy the world?
Well, I mean, we've been talking about AI. We've been talking about all kinds of different things. And, there's one way to look at it. There's one way to frame it. We've talked about it in the tornado apocalypse. What do we call it? The
supersonic tsunami.
The supersonic tsunami. That's one way to spin it. And if we're heading to the tsunami, I just assume it'd be that one than the alternative one, which I have to also posit as a possibility, right? In other words, slavery at scale. Yeah. But I'm a little worried.
I am as well.
Yeah. No, I know you are.
But I will continue to be steadfast in my fatalism from the moment that we figured out how to build transistors. The supersonic tsunami was always coming. Because
I get that.
Tech trees are very interesting.
That.
You ever read the book with your kids, If You Give a Mouse a Cookie?
Yeah, man. Yeah, but refresh it.
It's just basically this idea of, if you give a mouse a cookie, then he's going to want two, and if he wants two, he's going to want a glass of milk, and if he gets a glass of milk, he's going to need this. But it's been years, right?
Okay.
But it's this idea of one thing leads to another inevitably, and you think you're doing one simple thing, but it leads to a chain of causality that brings you way down this road, right? When you begin to figure out neutrons exist. You're not thinking, hey, that's a bullet that can be used to tear apart an atom. You're just like, hey, look, there's this cool subatomic particle that doesn't have an electrical charge and can penetrate the nucleus of an atom. And that's really interesting. What's that all about, right? You're not thinking that in 30 years, somebody's going to use it to create the power of the frickin' sun in a container, right?
Yeah.
But it was inevitable that someone would realize, oh, you could do that with that now that we know how that works, right?
So then why isn't, I agree, I'm tracking with you. Why isn't it inevitable that we are going to destroy ourselves?
Why
seems to me it is
not inevitable? It may be unavoidable, but
by your logic, it's inevitable.
I don't think that is inevitable. I think what happens is in tech trees, right? Part of this probably comes from the fact that for many years I've played video games where you have to advance through a technological tree and you have to research one thing to be able to unlock the next component in the tree, because that thing is a part of the larger thing that you end up being able to build. But you don't know what you're unlocking later until you unlock that first thing, right? And so it's like,
I think about this when somebody gives me a smoothie with kale in it.
Well, yeah, or just I was going to make a stupid analogy of like peanut butter and jelly. Like until you invented peanut butter, you couldn't have peanut butter and jelly, right? But once you had both, you're like, oh, those go together really well, right? So
it was only a matter of time until the God's magical concoction of peanut butter and jelly comes together. Yeah, totally.
And so essentially what happens is within technological development, specifically because it is so empirical, material, structured, ordered, right? When we unlock some physical property in a thing, that then lends us a platform upon which to build new physical things, and they become obvious.
Okay. Hold the phone.
But go ahead.
Hold the phone. Okay, I agree basically with what you're saying. I have no quibble with that. I mean, I'll continue to think about it as I always do. So why do you? I don't understand why. No. This is a genuine question. Like, then how are you not just like the biggest Marshall McLuhan bro on the planet? That's essentially what he's saying with the medium is the message, right? That there's certain inevitable logics that will play itself out based upon the fashioning of new mediums.
Because I think that when it comes to mediums, it is the messenger who shapes the message, not the medium. The medium has an effect on it.
But you just got finished saying that.
No. I'm talking about
when we split the atom, it was inevitable that we would make a nuclear weapon.
Yes.
That's what McLuhan is saying.
But it's not the same thing because we're not the messenger. Who's the messenger?
It didn't matter. It didn't matter. We have it.
The messenger is the nature of the physical universe. It has built in the capability to unleash a ridiculous amount of energy from a small amount of material when you break certain bonds at the atomic level. Like that's what happens.
So the medium is the message.
I mean, in that case, yes. But whether I send you an email, a DM, a tweet, a phone call, a text, or a carrier pigeon, that doesn't change the fact that I still wrote you the same 3 freaking paragraphs. Like that's why I don't buy that.
But you wouldn't think it unless there was the mechanism by which to send it. Now, I know you could say the same thing about letters and ink. Fair. But again, same thing. It's the same thing, right? Like, I wouldn't have had the idea to come on today at 12:15.
I swear you said 12:15.
Yeah, I swear. Yeah, okay. Yeah. All right, bro. I wouldn't have had the idea to come on and record a podcast with you if I didn't have a computer and I didn't have an internet connection, I didn't have a camera, and I didn't have the lights, and I didn't have the fancy microphone, right?
Right.
Like, that is what I'm just shocked. I thought you would be like a big Marshall McLuhan bro. You said the other day that you hate Marshall McLuhan, or didn't.
No,
you didn't
I
say
didn't
it like
say that
You
because
didn't say that.
I haven't spent enough time with him. I haven't spent enough time with him to have that strong of an opinion.
Okay, but I remember 4 or 5 years ago, I was reading Kevin Kelly's What Technology Wants. And I started tweeting about it because that's what I do. I read a book and these things are floating in my head. And I start tweeting about it. She's like, technology doesn't want, Kale. Like, stop it. You're making a category error or something. It doesn't want. It does.
It does not.
It does, absolutely.
It is an inanimate object lacking free will and intellect.
Doesn't the nuclear bomb want? Of course it does.
No. It doesn't want anything, which is why it doesn't do anything.
It summons me.
Nuclear bombs don't kill people, Kale. I kill people.
Right. Look, but we can recognize, though, right, that, when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? So there's some weird, like, woo situation.
There's no shaping. I'm not saying that there's no shaping.
There's that weird, like, that I like the word shaping. There's this weird thing that happens to you, right? It's like the other day, like a couple of months ago, we had a terrible winter, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a bunch of like down limbs and all this sort of stuff. And I could have like done I have a saw. I was like, screw this. I'm going to go get one of these little fancy DeWalt handheld, chainsaws. So I go out there and it's like friggin' awesome. Like, sawing things and making, and then I start just looking around. I'm like looking around the yard, like,
yeah,
well, I can
100%.
And I can do that. Like, so there's this weird interaction between the human subject, as you're saying, right? So I grant you the conceit of it, but I think there's way more there than you're allowing.
How did we get here from Mars, though?
Well, so rockets, again, to sort of carry this analogy,
mm-hmm.
It is inevitable that we will want to go to Mars as soon as we got to the moon. And it was inevitable that we would get to the moon as soon as we created the jet, right? I mean, you could trace it back, like, the slingshot, the bow and arrow, like you just keep going on these propulsion things all the way up to Jack Parsons, all the way up to jet engines, all the way up to rockets, to where we are now, right? There's this logic. It's like, as soon as this thing happens, you're making the argument that it was inevitable that we will have gotten to Mars.
I would put one caveat on this. I would say, I believe that there are major nodes on technology trees that are inevitable, and there are sub branches which are logical outcomes, but not necessarily inevitable. So to give an example, we've discussed the fact that a couple years back, they gave an AI a list of existing known compounds in their chemical formulas and said, use your pattern recognition and deriving from things that we already have, come up with new useful chemicals. And it came up with like a couple hundred of them, right? Things we hadn't thought about because it could go through all the combinations, play with them, see how they would work theoretically. And it came up with a bunch of new stuff, right? Those things were not inevitable that we were going to reach because they are all variations on a possible set of combinators, right? But I think things like AI, like creating machines that can think as well or better than we do, was an inevitable consequence of creating machines that could do any kind of computation at all. Like once we could figure out how to do it on a small scale, we were always going to figure out how to do it on a bigger scale. Once we figured out how to split the atom, it was always a possibility that we were going to use it destructively. Now, we could have just used it for energy, but we had the technology to use it that way. And then, and so it's like, there are paths that are so blazed clear, and then there are paths that are kind of tributaries, and they're like, well, we could have gone down that road. Maybe we would, maybe we wouldn't. There's stuff we've missed. I mean, watch this documentary with Bob Lazar, and he's talking about how they thought they were dealing with a gravitational field. And he's like, I think there's another strong force that's not gravity, that repels, and we don't know what it is, and we haven't figured it out. Eric Weinstein is on there talking about 14 dimensions and 4 dimensions and fiber dimensions and protractors and rulers and tensors and things that I don't know anything about. But he's trying to explain that, like, if these 10 vertical dimensions that intersect with our reality actually exist, then it would explain why we have the particles that we have and this and that. And he was going down this whole road, and it's like nobody knows what he's talking about, and he knows that they don't know. But it's like, there's a certain degree to which, like, we unlock one thing and then the next thing automatically unlocks. And then there's other things that don't necessarily unlock because they're non-obvious. You have to take the scenic route to get there.
Yeah, it takes a weirdo, to put something together in such a way that nobody else has thought to do before, and then boom, voila, then it opens up a whole new branch, a whole new.
So, for example, I do not agree with Elon and with Weinstein that it is inevitable that we're going to blow ourselves up eventually. I don't think that's inevitable. I think there's an uncomfortable probability.
I think that actually might be the part of Eric and Elon and all that crew that I actually do agree with.
Of course you do, because you're a doomer.
I'm not a doomer.
You're such a doomer.
Man, maybe so. Maybe so.
And the thing is, like, you're concerned about Hobbit things, going back to your place in the Shire, which is fine. But, like, we need more than Frodo. We need Gandalf. You know, Elon is a Gandalf. You're a Frodo. That's fine.
Yeah. Can I be? Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fair.
Like, you didn't want to go to Mordor. You don't want to leave the Shire.
Right.
But then it turns out that, like, okay, well, maybe there's some value in this quest, right? And so I don't know how to assuage your concerns. I think I've now unearthed something that you will continue to excavate, and we're going to come back and we're going to talk about this more, because this is one of these things that's planted deep in you, that's eating at you, and you don't know what it is either. I can see it. You know, like, the shape of it, but you're not sure. And it's really interesting to me why this bugs you so much. Because to me, I'm just like, hey, cool. Like, that's not my passion, is to go, like, as much as I'm into space and all that kind of stuff, like, not my passion to make humanity a multi-planetary species. I'm cool with it either way. But I get why they would be into it, and I understand their arguments, and I think that they're reasonable.
Do they get why they're so interested in it? I mean,
I think for them,
I know
again,
that's
people are religious, right? To them, this is a religious act almost. It's an act of faith, of virtue, of hope. They want to believe that the human race has a better future than it looks like on probabilistic calculations based on the stupid crap we've already done.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whatever it is that, you know, they're trying to preserve. And Eric is so specific about, like, he goes to India and he eats mangoes, and he goes to that one church in Spain and just looks up at the ceiling and can't get enough of it. And then there's this composition by, you know, such and such a composer, and that music just does something to him. And, like, he believes all that crap is worth preserving. He strongly believes that humanity does a lot of beautiful things, and he wants those things to be saved. I think that's a real passion for him.
Yeah. Unequivocally.
With Elon, it's
Eric,
more like he's just got an autistic hyperfixation on, this is what we have to do, and so I'm just going to do it. It's much more mechanistic with him.
You know, I can't, you know what I can't get out of my head, you know, and this is, I know it's very on brand for me, but I can't get Weston and Divine out of my head.
I had a feeling.
You know, I can't get the macrobes out of my head. And taking your, you know, you're sort of starting, you know, maybe an axiom, I don't know, but, you know, that like there seems to be a compulsion towards power, you know, that comes at the expense of love. And I know that sounds so cheesy and squishy, but I believe it. You know.
Yeah, I think a lot of relationships fail because of power dynamics.
Yeah. Right. And the inability to sort of negotiate that within, you know, if you can negotiate relationships in the register of love and subordinate that to compulsions to control and power, you know, that's got to be the key, right? I mean,
yeah,
I think both of us know that. But as soon as like power, as soon as that spirit gets its little foothold, it's like
all bets are off.
Done.
Okay, how does that relate to this? The feeling that I'm getting, the thing that I feel like you're not saying, but you almost want to say, is that you believe there is some. You just stop me if I'm wrong. There is some hidden, maybe preternatural barrier that is supposed to be stopping us from exporting whatever it is that we are beyond the sphere to which we have been previously constrained.
Yeah.
Almost like there's some invisible fence we're not supposed to cross.
Yeah, it's like, and maybe it's the spirit of Cain. It's the spirit of resentment. It's the spirit of murder.
We don't know what happens beyond the Van Allen belt. Just that.
No, I know.
We don't know what really goes on beyond Earth's magnetosphere. Like we've sent probes, but people have never been further than the opposite side of the moon, and we just did that last month.
Yeah, I would say 5 minutes ago.
That was the furthest we have ever been from Earth, was just a month ago.
Although also, by the way, just treated like a complete nothing burger.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Well, because what's it for? Like, we've become so grossly utilitarian about everything.
Interestingly enough, we actually don't know what it's for. I think there might be some really interesting questions to be had. Don't come back. Okay, Apollo 17. Right? Was it Chernin, the last guy?
Wait, what are you referring to?
I think it was Apollo 17, which was the last mission that went to the moon.
Oh, yeah.
And he allegedly, big caveat, told his buddy, he's dead now, told his buddy that they were told not to come back.
Yes. Yeah, I forgot about that.
I mean, wow. Okay, So, who knows what that means, but you can sort of see this. I'm trying to juggle all these things, in my head, and how the world works, et cetera. But I'll concede, Mr. Skojec. I will concede that I feel that there are these sort of invisible tripwires that are real and we can't see them. And you said we don't know what happens outside the belt, but like in a weird way, like I don't know what is happening 5 minutes away from me. So the conundrum, persists, whether you scale it out 5 minutes or 5 million miles away. It's like, and maybe it's the same thing. Maybe it's the same problem. And the impulse to colonize Mars doesn't matter if I can't colonize 5 yards away from me. Yeah.
I think
does that track or?
I think you need to excavate this more, and we'll come back to it. We're going to be over 3 hours between
of course we are.
First and second recording here, and this is good work, but it's slow work. And I don't know if people.
Maybe we should chop it up into 2 episodes, like the first 35 minutes plus, until we get to the CIA portion of the conversation, and then chop.
We're not structured enough to do that.
I know.
And we do too many callbacks. No, people are just going to have to deal with the fact that it's this long.
All right.
They don't have to watch the whole thing.
Yes, they do. They're required by law. Now that we are monetizing the situation, they're required.
they gave their implicit contractual consent when they started this video. Did you not read the fine print?
That's right. Are you not entertained?
What the hell was the theme of this show, Kale?
Convergences. We're trying. We're gathering. We're drawing.
Look, this is messy stuff.
Yeah.
It's difficult to brand it, package it, put a theme on the box, and launch it to participating retailers.
Yeah, it's true. All right, we're going to try though.
All right, man.
All right. God bless you, man.
Until next time.
Yeah, cheers.